Hello there, a very good morning to you. Sir Keir Starmer set for his first PMQ battle today.
As he suspends 7 Labour MPs for voting against the government.
While James Cleverly is the first official candidate for Conservative leadership as the process begins today.
Kamala Harris holds her first campaign rally since launching her bid for the presidency.
I will spend the coming weeks continuing to unite our party so that we are ready to win in November.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrives in Washington as he's set to address the US Congress.
Strictly scandal, overpaid stars and licence fee debates. Is the BBC in crisis?
Blue skies for many of us this morning. It's not going to last. We are going to see thicker cloud later, with rain arriving by the end of the day and into tomorrow. So make the most of it. I'll have the full forecast coming up very soon.
So there we go, the time, 1 minute past 6 o'clock on this Wednesday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Ann Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Well, Ms. Diamond, here she is today. It was such a success on Sunday, you and I together, that they thought, let's do it again.
Yeah, they said, would you mind doing Wednesday? And I said yes. Why did I say yes? At 2 o'clock this morning, I thought, why did I say yes?
Why did you say yes? Because you thought, you know, the chance to be with them and work with them.
Well, that's true.
You know, just great.
It's obviously that. I have never, ever been here on a Wednesday before.
Well, there you are.
Yeah, I know. And actually, it's no different from as it is on a Saturday or a Sunday.
I think you may well be right there.
Yeah.
So welcome, Anne. Very nice to have you. And thank you for your nice reaction to the both of us being together. We appreciate that on radio and on television. Our top story today is Keir Starmer.
Yes, isn't this interesting how already, 2 weeks into the premiership, he's had to firmly bring his boot down on those who would not agree with him.
Well, the thing is, he can do that, with the majorities have, and he's showing who is boss right from the start. He will face off against the current Conservative leader, that is Rishi Sunak.
Yes, and of course all of this is happening as nominations for the Tory leadership begin, with former Home Secretary James Cleverly already announcing his campaign because he wants to be the new leader of the opposition.
Despite not telling me yesterday, but
I know, I saw that. He just refused to be pressed.
I said, I'll take that as a yes, and there I was right. We've got James Heal from The Spectator who joins us here today. James, very good to see you. I think we were saying there about Starmer. I mean, basically, he didn't have to do this. He didn't have to be so tough on people, but he's got the majority, he's got the power, and he's basically saying, don't mess with me because this is the way it's going to be from here on in. Big suspensions on these people.
6 months. Yeah. And, of course, you know, he's helped the not-so-magnificent 7, as one Labour MP refers to them last night, because they were all of the left. They're all well-known troublemakers for Keir Starmer. And I think what he's doing right now is saying, we don't want the habits of rebellion to become embedded in this new parliament, this new parliamentary party, so he's going to make an example out of these people. And 6 months suspensions, I suspect there'll be some of those people who got suspended, like John McDonnell, who'll probably never take the whip up again under Keir Starmer's Labour.
Is that right?
I suspect so, because I don't think he wants them in their ranks.
They'll review it. He said that he's going to review their suspensions.
Well, it's one of those things where I think it'll be kind of an ongoing rolling thing, and actually they'll never let them back in, because why would you? You've got a majority of 172. You can have a whole bunch of nice, new, shiny stormtroopers, or you can have some old lefty troublemakers.
Like
Absolutely.
it.
Either that or Keir leaders, whichever you prefer.
You mightn't know the answer to this, James. I don't wish to put you in a position, but when we say suspension straight away, are they suspended on full pay, or do they have their pay and benefits taken away?
No, because all it is your parliamentary party membership. So they're still MPs, they still get all their benefits, still get all their pay. It's just that you're no longer part of the parliamentary party.
That's not a bad deal, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. You'd have to follow what your whip says.
It's not a very good deal for their constituents, though.
Well,
they were voted in there on the Labour ticket, weren't they?
Well, absolutely. This is the thing. And, of course, you can go there, you can kind of jet off and you lose the whip, etc., and do nothing for 4 or 5 years. This is the system we have, which is that we have judgment. You can have a great MP, you can have a bad MP, but either way, they're not going to be Labour MPs, are they?
It's going to make PMQs today rather interesting.
It is, isn't it? And of course, I think Reform have got their first PMQ as well today. I was talking to some of them last night about that. And I think that, it's going to be one where the Conservatives, obviously, are a bit chastened by that massive election defeat, are going to go in there and try and make a bit of hay out of this and saying, hang on a sec, he's only been in 2 weeks, already lost 7 MPs. At the current rate of attrition, we're going to see them all gone by next year.
Or not.
James, have you been casting your eye over likely runners and riders with the Conservative leadership?
Yes, absolutely. And I was there on the terrace last night with a bunch of MPs, and there was amazement at some of the names doing the rounds. People like Kemi Badenoch was out, Tom Tugendhat doing the rounds. And so I think that, look, they're going to start seeing proper announcements from today. 7 o'clock is this evening is when nominations are formally open. James Cleverly's obviously come out, but I think it's going to be the same names we've seen before. Kemi Badenoch, Tom Tugendhat, Robert Jenrick, potentially Priti Patel, James Cleverly as well. So about 5, 6 names or so.
When you say you were on the terrace, what does that mean? I mean, we know that there is a terrace along the side of the river, basically.
Don't tell me you haven't been on the terrace.
No, I've been on the terrace, but I'm just saying, when you're saying I was on the terrace, does that mean drinkies with all of the...
Yeah, we'll see who was out there, and that's all there is to who's up, who's down. You just suddenly discover you're all friends.
And they're mingling and doing the rounds, are they?
Yeah, of course they are. Yeah, because they want to be seen. They want to show that they're sort of, popular among their MPs. Something I can do for you, listen, etc. It's quite an interesting kind of being at the watering hole, seeing how the whole game is working.
Not just any watering hole, heavily subsidised.
Well, that's very true.
Best watering
very
hole
nice.
in London, I'll say that.
Yeah.
We'll get you on Eamonn next time.
Yeah, but that's where the business is done often, isn't it?
That and MP smoking rooms, and sadly I don't get to see what goes on in there.
Yeah, no, of course not. but who are the most impressive then, do you think?
I think that it's about who comes out of government actually enhanced. And I think Kemi Badenoch, someone who every reshuffle kind of went up a bit in profile. I think Robert Jenrick put together a great pitch. I think MPs are asking, is he the right man? I think Tom Tugendhat, who's someone who was in the security brief in the Home Office, meant that MPs couldn't see a lot of them, but he deals a lot with the sort of intelligence services, the secret services.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see how he does, because he's a bit of an unknown quantity, I'd say.
And were they talking very much about what's been happening in America?
I was there last week in the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee.
Oh, were you? Or was it really exciting?
Oh, it was incredible. It really was. Yeah, there was real evangelical fervour, particularly that bond between Trump and his delegates, because they think after the assassination attempt, he's been saved by God. It's a real kind of sense of the bond being strengthened. And so they were in a really positive mood.
They could put on a good show, don't they? I mean, the professionalism of the whole event was incredible.
It was. It put sort of our party conference on steroids, wasn't it? I remember what Quentin Letts once saying, you can never be too camp for America, and it certainly was very camp. The YMCA, Star Spangled Banner, it was great fun to be there. And not many Brits, because normally obviously you get a fair number of Brits going on there. I think it was just Liz Truss and Nigel Farage out there.
That's it, is it?
Yeah, only Brits.
But I mean, a lot of it has been happening in the world of politics here domestically.
Yep.
Meanwhile, an awful lot's been happening in Washington.
Incredible, isn't it? And I think last week they were very confident in America, talking to delegates, talking to Republicans. They thought they had it all sewn up. And now, actually, we've got this unknown question, which is Kamala Harris running instead of Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden was a known quantity, and now we've got Kamala, who may, have lacked some of Biden's strengths, but post-debate...
Well, she did her first rally speech yesterday. Yeah. What did you think?
I thought that... Look, it was what she needed to do, I think, kind of reassure some of the doubters, but it wasn't too impressive, I think. And the key question, of course, is can she make up the mind in the doubters, the people who are sort of annoyed by what's happened with Biden and inflation in Afghanistan, for instance? Are
there enough floating voters in America to sort of tip the balance one way or the other?
Yeah, certainly. And I think actually people will be looking and they think, do I want a second term of Trump after all we had last time? We've seen the prequel, seen how this ends. Do we want to see the same thing? I think there will be a fair number, and it's all competitive. And I think the Republicans, from talking to them in the last few days, are now saying, hang on a sec, we have to pull our adverts, look at our research, and actually, how do we take the fight to Kamala, who's a very different candidate to Biden?
Tell you what I think, James. I think she brings a lot of energy to it. I mean, she's been quiet. She has had a very quiet vice premiership presidency right up until now. And now she's basically saying, right, I've done 4 years training or so, I'm now ready to go here, I can do this. And then it's not two old men fighting each other this time.
Absolutely.
Well, suddenly now Trump is now the oldest ever candidate running for office. I think he's sort of 77 now. So he can look, as new generation compares it. I think there's the energy thing. I think there's the sort of wellness point. I also think it's just that, she's someone who isn't kind of associated so much with the Biden presidency. Obviously, she's had responsibility failures, but as you say, Eamonn, she's not been the same way as Biden would be running for a second term. So I think that there's some hope that maybe she can kind of reinvent herself as a kind of third-way candidate, who can take the benefit of the Democratic Party machine, but actually not be held responsible for some of the things that's gone wrong in the past 4 years. So I think that it's a more exciting race than it was a week ago, and one where the Democrats have got a bit of renewed hope and vigour.
And then something else that has happened is that the head of the Secret Service eventually did resign. She was stubbornly not going to, but suddenly something changed her mind.
Well, it was extraordinary. It was at the convention, and of course all these senators were chasing her around. These are senior US politicians chasing her around, demanding her resignation. I think it was always going to happen. You know, when you're in a position like that, when the president's life is on the line, and it's such a political partisan environment, and the Secret Service seemed to have felt there was only one way this was going to go, and it took, what, 10 days? But probably should have happened on day one.
It was extraordinary, wasn't it? When she herself said this is the most fundamental breach of security that's ever happened in the United States, and yet she still thought she could hang on to her job.
It's amazing, isn't it? You know, the urge to dig in.
She's not taking responsibility. Although she is saying this happened to my watch, she's basically saying this is somebody over me, or she's alluding to something else, that she was out of control. She didn't have the shot.
Absolutely. It reminds me of my favourite Gordon Brown quote, which is that I take full responsibility, which is why the person responsible went immediately. And a bit like that.
Yes.
Let me ask you about Benjamin Netanyahu. Does this save a great embarrassment? Joe Biden and he wouldn't be great friends anyway. Biden's now disappeared with COVID or whatever he's got. So who's looking after Netanyahu? What treatment will he be given while he's in the US?
I think that, you know, the ties between the US and Israel are a bit like the ties between us and the US as well, which is that they're so deep and long-standing. There's so many within the security apparatus. I think in terms of the US political infrastructure, Jake Sullivan, who's the National Security Advisor, Blinken, who's obviously involved with the State Department, those are the ones who will really be looking after it. And, you know, Biden has always adopted a kind of sort of chairmanship role, even when he was a younger man. So I think there will be people who are really up on the detail of foreign policy. The ties between the US and Israel are so tight.
Yes, they really are.
It'll go, even if you have someone in the White House who is less pro-Israel, or someone changing with a hardliner in, you know, the Knesset in Israel, they are so deep that it'll be fine no matter who's president.
Right, OK. James, for the moment, thank you very much indeed.
Interesting times.
Thank you.
Very interesting times.
Look at some other stories coming into the newsroom on this Wednesday morning. This is what we've got for you. A British soldier has been rushed to hospital after being stabbed outside the Brompton barracks in Kent last night. The victim, who's in his 40s, is said to have been in uniform when he was attacked by a man wearing a ski mask. Police have since arrested a 24-year-old on suspicion of attempted murder.
The six-time Olympic medalist Charlotte Dujardin has been sensationally banned from the Paris Olympics ahead of Friday's opening ceremony. She's a dressage champion, and she stands accused of whipping a horse's legs almost 30 times in a video that was leaked and has caused shockwaves across Team GB.
And the royal family have confirmed plans to replace their 15-year-old helicopters with brand new models that will partially run on sustainable fuel. It comes as the annual Sovereign Grant report shows travel for Britain's most famous family topped £2 million last year. You know, what is the point of them highlighting? You know, everything's about envy with money. You're going to hear a lot about BBC presenters and what they're being paid compared to what you're not being paid and whatever. But the royal family, £2 million to ferry the royal family around to all the big projects they've handled this year is like nothing. It's like tuppence halfpenny. £2 million. What is the problem? What is the problem? And if they earn so much of their own money, and they earn billions and billions, OK, we'll have a conversation that you're going to have to pay for this and that. But why should Princess Anne pay to turn up in Bristol one day for an event that's not hers? It's not her responsibility. She's doing it on behalf of you and me and Anne. And I don't see what the big issue is. £2 million is not a lot of money overall for the royal family.
It's all the time in the press, isn't it? It's the sort of politics of envy, isn't it? They're just trying to stir it up and say, are we paying them too much? Do they really have to go on a special train or a special car? And the answer is yes, the royals. Yes. If they're going to carry out their duties, do you expect them to ride a bike?
Do you remember when Cameron was made Prime Minister and he talked about he would travel on a bicycle around the place? And what a lot of nonsense.
Yes.
The reason why we take the Germans and the French seriously is they have massive big cars that represent their state. So whether they're Renaults or Citroëns for France, or whether they're Mercedes or Audis ladies for Germany or whatever, that's what they do, and it reflects the power and the status of the country. And if you go around in a bicycle, you'll be treated as if you go around in a bicycle. The other thing I used to object about and them complaining about money was they always find receipts for Margaret Thatcher during the 80s. This was for her hairdressing and whatever it is. Now, what would it take to send particularly a woman outside the door representing the country and looking well? Of course she's got to have her hair done every day, of course. We don't want all our politicians to look like, do you remember how Michael Foot used to look? Yes.
You know, old duffel coat and things like that.
Donkey jacket.
You've got to look the business if you're in the job, haven't you?
I would think so. I would think so. The Americans always look the business.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like we were talking about the Republican convention. My goodness, the razzmatazz was so professionally done, wasn't it? Absolutely fabulous. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, I'm not terribly surprised by this awful story about the Olympic champion whipping the horse. Because, and I know people may completely disagree with me, but when you see a horse doing dressage, you think, how do they get it to do that?
It's like a circus performance.
It is. Do you remember they used to do it with elephants in circuses, didn't they? They used to bash them on the foot until they hopped on one leg or something. And I can't help, I know there will be dressage experts saying that's not how it is, but it sort of doesn't shock me to find out that it clearly has happened.
Case. And I think, you know, if it has happened, then I think it's right that this girl, Charlotte what's her name? Jardine, should be banned. Should be banned.
Yes.
You know, you just can't take all the glory and
she's admitted doing it. She said it was an error of judgment, and by gum it was. But it just makes you wonder whether it goes on a lot. It's not a one-off
error of judgment. I mean, that's something
dressage is basically getting horses to dance.
Yes.
And they're big animals, and they frisk around so prettily, doing what looks like ballet steps almost. It's not natural, is it?
Well, the older I get, the more outraged I get about animal cruelty and how human beings treat animals, because honestly, there are so many videos available of where animals want to communicate with us and they end up, certain individuals can't speak their language. I mean, there's a woman who's queen of the primates, Jane, will come to me in a minute, but I've interviewed her, Jane Goodall, and just absolutely incredible. She actually speaks to chimpanzees and to apes and things, and they speak back to her. So she's cracked how to do that.
Yes.
And one day there will be a code where we can talk to our dogs or our cats or whatever.
And I'll find it when there's a big centre page spread in one of the newspapers today about how dogs particularly, but cats too, can absolutely tell whether you're stressed or not, whether you're ill, whether there's something wrong with you, and they can communicate that to you.
So when you're sick and you upset tummy or whatever it is, the cat or dog will nuzzle into you because it feels the vibes, it gets the whole sensation. And I think, you know, when we look now, and the thing I'm disgraced at myself about and really, really hate myself for is eating meat. And I have lost that connection when I see meat as from a packet and there's ham in a packet. I don't see it as come from a pig, you know, and I have to form that connection again. And anyway, if you've got a story to add to that, if you believe that's true.
Well, as you know, I was recently ill, and I wonder whether I've got a little fluffy dog, and she became very Ellie. She got very, very clingy before I knew I was ill, and I can't help wondering whether that Did she know? If they really get, I'll find this report for you and we'll explain it more. But it is absolutely fascinating. They have an intuition about our illnesses and stresses and woes.
Sometimes better than your children have. There you are. Is your animal your best friend? Let us know. Eamonn McGiffin, morning.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine start out there for many of us, early sunshine, but it will turn cloudier into the afternoon with some rain coming along later. 1 or 2 showers first thing in the east, western Scotland perhaps, as well as West Wales, but otherwise most places getting off to a sunny start. Through the morning, the cloud will build and there will be further showers developing in the east of England, but there'll also be more persistent rain pushing into western Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales and the far southwest of Cornwall. Where we get the sunshine in the south and southeast, 25, 26 Celsius, feeling very warm indeed. But where we've got the rain moving in, it's going to start to feel more unpleasant. The breeze picking up as well into the afternoon and evening. By this stage, the rain reaching Exmoor, Dartmoor and covering much of Cornwall. We keep the sunny spells into the evening for the east and southeast of England, but Wales is turning increasingly cloudy and wet. Northern Ireland by this stage also reasonably damp, as well as northwest England and western Scotland. 1 or 2 showers for the east of Scotland. Otherwise, we cling on to some breaks in the cloud through the evening and temperatures of 18 to 19 Celsius. Now, the first area of rain moves through Scotland, western England and Wales overnight. There'll also be reasonable covering of cloud spreading across the country overnight, with temperatures holding up into the mid-teens in many places. A warmer night compared with recent nights. But it's a dreary start to Thursday. Certainly a lot of low cloud around, especially towards southwestern parts. Some coastal mist and fog. And the rain and drizzle turning more heavy through the morning. Some outbreaks of more persistent wet weather moving through the south and southeast for a time. Further north, the rain is more showery, but it's a cloudy afternoon. And it's also going to be cooler as a result, with temperatures of 20 to 22 Celsius.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Yeah, well, it is feeling warmer, there's no doubt about that, but still no direct sunshine. We need some sunshine.
No indirect sunshine either. No any sunshine.
No, exactly. It's all cloud, but at least it is warmer.
And welcome to summer.
Yes.
We can brighten up your day because you could be the winner of £30,000 in our Great British Giveaway competition.
Yeah, it's our biggest cash prize of the year. Just think what you could do with all that extra dosh. Here's how you could win it all.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. Which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Still to come, the guy who runs the BBC, the Director General, is called Tim Davis, and he says, oh, sorry about over this Strictly scandal. I don't know you've got to apologise to anybody. I don't think anybody cares. And just more people will watch.
Yeah, but they're always asking, is the BBC in crisis? I don't know how long we've both been in broadcasting, but the BBC's always in crisis. It just is.
It just is. That's the way it is. You don't hear about the rest of them. It's only because they get paid your money. That's why. Talking about the BBC, we're talking about the crisis that it's in this time after the break.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, the BBC has released how much they pay their top presenters, but it's all a lot of rubbish, really. It is a lot of rubbish.
It is.
We know, because we're in the business, we know how their pay is broken up, and a lot of them work for private companies, a lot of them get paid directly. This is the money they get paid directly from the BBC.
Absolutely. And, of course, Gary Lineker comes out top, doesn't he? We might as well have known that. He is allegedly on well over £1 million. Controversially, actually, Hugh Edwards, who, of course, is suspended, received a £40,000 pay rise and continued to be paid his salary for almost a full year.
So all of this comes as the BBC's Director General, Tim Davie, has apologised for the ongoing Strictly scandal. He says the BBC will never tolerate unacceptable behaviour of any kind. Right, so let's now speak to the fantastic entertainment and royal reporter, Sarah Louise Robertson. We say hello, good morning to you, Sarah Louise.
Good morning to you, Eamonn. Good morning to you, Anne. Lovely to be on with you today.
How outraged are you, Sarah Louise, by the Strictly thing? I mean, actually, Anne and I were talking. We don't think people are outraged at all. I think people go, oh, really? Oh, I never thought those two get on. But people are not outraged, surely.
I don't think it's so much outrage. I think it's more dismay, actually, that all these celebrities who have had their chance and been able to go on the fantastic show that is Strictly, and at the time lapped it all up, and you would see them on Saturday night with their arms around their dance partner, hugging them like they're their best friend or husband and don't want to let them go. And then they all start running and complaining and saying, oh, I was bullied. Oh, I've been mistreated. They didn't say anything at the time. Well, in the case of Amanda Abbington, she did do so. But, you know, all these other people that are coming out of the woodwork now, all these years later, when they were so eager to take their check off the BBC and be on the show and have all the kudos of being on. I think people just think, well, look, it's a dance show, it's a competition. What do you expect? You are going to have to work hard. It is a tough thing. Dancing is hard work. You know, if you want to win, the dancers are going to push you to be the best. Obviously, in some cases, maybe the methods were unorthodox. I'm not saying I agree with them. No one obviously deserves to be hit. Absolutely not. That's disgraceful. And the person who's done that, you know, has gone, has left. But I don't think anybody really, on the whole, is overly shocked. What is a bitter pill, I think, for people to swallow is the licence fee payers. This matter of Hugh Edwards' pay salary, Eamonn and Anne. The fact that he got a £40,000 pay rise when he was effectively off air, we didn't see him. He was off air for over 8 months and his pay went up to £480,000, and he was getting that right up until March of this year. I think that's the bit of a bitter pill to swallow to the BBC fee payers.
Has said, you know, I'm not going to discuss any one particular case like this. And anyway, officially and legally, Hugh Edwards was off ill, really, wasn't he? And so in those circumstances, the BBC would be expected to pay his salary. I just wonder if we're all getting a bit upset over nothing.
Well, I think it's because what it is, it just seems like the BBC has been engulfed in these crises, as what they call them, and now it's like, does it face an existential threat? Is that what's happening now to the BBC? But they've overcome worse before. You know, they survived the Jimmy Savile crisis. They've survived what happened with the disgraceful shenanigans with Martin Bashir in order to get Diana's Panorama interview, and they have survived Hugh Edwards, but obviously now it's come out about his fee. I think what is going on is that the BBC licence fee is in freefall. There is over 500,000 less people paying the licence fee this year than what there was last year. And if that continues, that's when we have a situation, because how on earth are they going to be able to attract top talent and be able to pay for the shows that they want to pay without the licence fee coming in? So that's where there's this fuzzy area, and where, you know, the BBC could be finding itself under threat in the future. And it also faces axing 500 jobs. So the people who are working on the bottom rungs of the ladder, the real workers, as opposed to the so-called talent of Lineker, if you want to call them talented, I don't know. Some people might. I personally don't. But, you know, those people who may be facing the thought of losing their job, they're the ones who are probably finding it quite hard to swallow that the likes of Hugh Edwards was sat on the BBC gravy train for all this time.
Well, I know I totally take what you're saying, Sarah Louise, but I also would look at some of the names and say, OK, you try replacing Gary Lineker, you try replacing Hugh Edwards, because I'll tell you this, the BBC have not replaced Hugh Edwards on the news front at night, you know, with the 10 o'clock news and the 6 o'clock news and whatever. And it's not that easy to get people of this calibre. And what you find with ITV and the BBC in general, if you don't pay much money, you don't get much of a presenter, really, at the end of the day. And I think it's obvious over all the channels nowadays, TV companies don't like risk. They don't like people who step up. They don't like the Jeremy Kyles. They don't like the Piers Morgans, whatever. They hate any chance of a risk or anything going wrong, so they'll hire bland, dull people.
And people won't watch.
Well, you're right there, both of you. I suppose you do get what you pay for. You know, the likes of America, their talent attracts massive figures, and that's because they have that sense of competition. But we are where we are. I mean, it would be a shame to lose more talent. You know, I do think it's a fantastic institution, and it will come through this. It always does. It's the corporation. It's survived worse. It will get through it, but obviously there just will be more changes, and Strictly will be a much more, I don't know how to put it, really. I mean, it's already a family-orientated show. Now it's going to be even softer because they've got these chaperones that are going to be in when they're on training. So people aren't going to push themselves. The dancers are going to be so frightened, you know, oh, sorry, did I tread on your toe there? You know, I must apologise. Did someone note that down? That was an accident, as we can see. So, you know, where do you draw the line? It's starting to become silly, really, and childish.
But also, Sarah Louise, these figures and these people whose names are printed as getting so much money and whatever it is, this does not represent the business at all, because you will find that, and I know who they are on this list, they get half their salary from the BBC and half their salary will come from an independent company that hires them for different programmes. So they'll all be earning over $1 million.
Yeah, these aren't the real figures at all.
They're not real figures at all. And then you never hear those two Egypts on Have I Got News for You? What are they called?
Paul and Hislop.
They're never mentioned in anything. And for 30 years or so, they've been creaming it off the BBC. And because it's made by an independent company, nobody ever mentions them. Massive amounts of money
for every show.
Yeah. But anyway, that's just want to point all
that being said, it's good, you see, and that was your point about Gary Lineker.
Yes,
if you pay big money, I mean, you are more likely to hold on to the really big talent.
Yes, yeah. But there we go. Sarah, we must talk again some other time. Lovely having you on this morning. Thanks for having
thank you.
Thank you for having so much energy and analysis involved in all of that.
Did you ever flirt with the idea of going to America?
Yeah, I've twice happened to be. Once I was offered in Canada the job of a weatherman.
Oh.
Yeah, I was offered that. And I just sort of thought of it, what is the point where your mother, your father would never see you on TV? What's the point of doing it if nobody knows you on it, you know? So I thought...
Big money, though, even for a weatherman.
Well, I did, yeah, it was more than a weather job, but I said no, basically. And then I went and I did this quiz show for Fox TV.
Oh.
Yeah, and they said, we want the Irish guy that does the lottery. I think they meant Dermot O'Leary or something. They ended up, they got me and I couldn't believe it. And I went over to do a daytime version of this. And then 3 days into it, they changed everything and they said, this is so good, we're putting this out in the evening. And I remember phoning my wife and saying, we're going to have to move out to California.
Oh, wow.
They really want me here and I'm going down. You know that street with all the palm trees and whatever? That's the way I was going to work, in this limo and whatever. And I had a bungalow there and a golf cart. It was absolutely incredible. Anyway, I'll cut this very long story short. So I'm working really, really bad. A lot of very ignorant people, it has to be said. And really have one regret in my life that I didn't punch a guy when I was out there. I really would have, if I had my life to live again, I would have really satisfiedly been sacked for punching this git. But basically, anyway, they put the show out. One episode of the show went out and it came fourth in its rating. So it was behind Lost, it was behind The Biggest Loser, there was something else there.
Fair enough.
And fair enough, and it came fourth, and that was it. It disappeared. 36 shows or so disappeared. Disappeared, never to be shown again. No one, the only person ever replied to an email, me saying goodbye to them, was the lady in wardrobe. Nobody else. It was like you got a disease and no one wanted to catch it from you. That
Brutal.
was it. Yeah. It was
so you look at these big American newscasters and big stars, and they are earning very big money, and they are usually, most of them, very, very good. But they're only hanging on in there by their nails, aren't they? Because things can be axed just like that.
Yeah. I mean, I love hearing that certain people have decided to give up their job or whatever it is, and you think nobody decides to give up their job. No, there's another story.
But ratings, everything.
I'll keep it for the next
daily
book.
ratings.
Yeah.
Yes, it's good. Yeah, I mean, I did exactly the same thing. I flirted with American TV and got very carried away and very excited about it.
Yes.
And we were doing deals in the boardroom over the money, really. And I was just told, you've just got to be there and be charming.
Yeah.
But the lawyers said, as soon as if we get to the point where we say, no, I'm sorry, that's a deal breaker, you are to get up and walk out and not say a thing. That is what you have to do. And so I obeyed them and did exactly that. It came to, no, I'm sorry, this is a deal breaker. My contingent of lawyers stood up, walked out, I followed them out and never heard of anything again. That was it. It was just, we'd done all of the pilot shows.
We're not breaking any deals at all.
No.
We're not. We're going through the newspapers. We're doing that right after this short break. Hope you can join us.
Indeed.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In South Yorkshire, the A61 remains closed in both directions along Barnsley Road at Mapplewell after an accident on Sunday afternoon. On the M40 in Warwickshire, the outside lane is closed each way for barrier repairs after an accident between junctions 12 and 11 between Gaydon and Banbury, causing roughly 3 miles of southbound queues. In Bedfordshire, there's a report that a lorry's overturned on the A507 just off the A6 at the Clough roundabout. In Herefordshire, the A49 is closed each way between Wilton and St Owen's Cross because of a fallen tree. Train services are suspended between Cardiff Central and the Severn Tunnel junction because of a shortage of trains. And in Cornwall, the A395 is closed in both directions between Hallworthy and Kennard's House after an accident. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, time for the best part of the show, our Greatest Britain, where we share amazing people who do amazing things. And this week, that is Dr. Leo Cheng and the Reverend Hilary Cheng.
Well, Dr. Chen
regularly serves as a volunteer surgeon aboard the Mercy ships in West Africa and has recently served his 17th mission aboard the ships. He volunteers with his wife, Reverend Hilary Cheng, a Methodist minister in the UK.
Thank you for joining us, and what a privilege. So just briefly explain, what are Mercy ships?
Well, Mercy ship provide world-class surgery on the ship, and the ship then sail to these poorest of the poor country because there's no infrastructure to get road or rail there. And we offer free surgery and also education, training of medical staff, and partner with the local or the host nation to build up their surgical and anaesthetic services.
So how long have you been travelling West Africa? You go on all these different ships, different ports, and you treat the needy and the vulnerable. How long have you both been doing this?
20 years.
20 years?
Just over 20 years.
And you take the time to do this out of your own holiday from work. Why do you do it?
Well, because I'm indebted to the education in this country with all the qualification I get. And NHS is great. I love the NHS because without NHS, we see cases that we see in the low-income country. And I want to make use of my hand to help those people who have no way of helping themselves. Because the tumours, the deformities, not just a physical ailment, but it's being ostracised and die early, commit suicide because they've been ostracised by their family.
When you're on the ship, you are seeing the very worst that the country can offer. I find it a great privilege to work alongside these people.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We have got today to go through the newspapers. We've got former Labour advisor Mike Buckley. We say hello, good morning to you.
Hello,
Welcome.
good morning.
Great to be here.
And we've got the amazing Claire Muldoon. Nice to see you here, Claire,
That
as well.
wasn't what you said when I walked on. What did you call me?
You only said about
Boy,
your
you don't
friends,
say it out loud. For heaven's sake.
I could be as ruthless as Keir Starmer, you know.
Really?
I could.
Oh,
I could be.
I've witnessed that.
Well,
Your sharp tongue.
Well,
Mike,
true.
tell us what you make of what he's doing. So just two or 3 weeks now after being elected, he's basically showing members of the Labour Party and MPs...
The order of the boot.
Yes, who the boss is.
He is absolutely showing them who the boss is. So there was a vote yesterday. You'll all have heard the story about the two-child benefit cap, which is a good policy brought in by the last government, which restricts benefits access to parents, which Labour MPs, Keir himself, Angela Rayner, many of the senior people in the Labour Party have said they would like to see change, would like to see withdrawn because of the impact it has on child poverty. But they're not making that decision yet because they're concerned about the country's finances. Fine. So there was a vote yesterday, not instigated by the Labour Party, but instigated by the SNP. Labour MPs were told to vote against it. 7 of them voted for it, and Keir has suspended them. He's taken away their Labour whip, which means that they now sit as independents for the next 6 months at least, and then I think they're going to review.
Yeah, but he doesn't need them.
He doesn't need them. What he's saying to all of his 412 MPs, I forget the exact number, is if you misbehave, there will be consequences, which is absolutely the right thing for him to do. So he's making an example of these people, but for good reason.
Can MPs not act with conviction? Can they not act with their moral compass? Can they not act with the desire independently of what they were standing for
they were
before
elected
the election?
about 3 weeks ago on a Labour manifesto, and yesterday they voted against that Labour manifesto. There are consequences to that.
It's actually in the manifesto.
It was in the manifesto.
What, to keep the two-child cap?
Well, it said it wasn't in the manifesto to remove it.
No, exactly. It wasn't in the manifesto at all.
Right.
Well,
and everybody expected it to be, and it wasn't.
So therefore, surely they could vote the way they wanted to with some moral conviction.
Well, they were told by the party whips, of whom there are now many, to vote in a certain way, and they voted the opposite way. So they voted against what they were told to do by the party that they were elected to support.
And indeed, the leader,
There are consequences to
Prime
that.
Minister, has turned round and said that Joe Biden was absolutely fine when he met him. So there's two things here now
But
going.
he's not a doctor. He doesn't know.
Oh, come on.
When he could have been,
Eamonn,
he could have been all right.
I mean,
that's not relevant to the matter at hand for one thing. But also, of course, he was going to say that.
one thing and doing another.
I mean, the last thing Keir Starmer has done exactly what he said he was going to do the whole way along, and I think that's something that's been consistent throughout his leadership of the Labour Party, his leadership of the country.
Let me ask you both.
But the last thing he's going to do is come back from the States and say, "Yeah, Biden's a mess. He's got to go." I mean, that's hardly diplomatic, well-behaved, good behaviour, is it?
Well, we're not dealing with facts now, then, are we not?
Okay. Well, what about the facts of paying for people to have children? Part of me thinks, oh, yes, this is all very well and good and this is amazing. And then I go, why am I paying for somebody else's kids for?
You're not.
But I'm being asked to.
No, I know, but but the fact is, you're not paying people to have children by by adding on the benefit of more than 2 children. We have got a population crisis. We have got an ageing population.
So
we need
we haven't
to
got enough
underpin
people.
Them. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough children.
So you would pay for people to have children?
That's not the way you look at it, Eamonn. You are, because not everybody...
I'm just asking you a question.
I'm just answering. You're not having children to be paid for them, and a lot of people will not actually get the benefit.
No, I know all of this is hypothetical. Right, but the original proposal for these 7 people who are suspended is that we should be paying for people to have children.
No, that's not the reason for this benefit. The benefit is there because not a lot of people will get the benefit.
That isn't how
not
benefits
everyone who
work.
has a child will get
paying
it.
pensions isn't paying people to get old or paying for people to, not die. That isn't how benefits work. The benefit system exists so that people can live a decent life because we all want to live in a decent society. There is a societal benefit to paying the child benefit.
Why am I
those kids
paying
then
for
grow
someone
up
else to have a decent life to have 7 children?
Well, why wouldn't you do that?
Because I don't want to do it.
Well, you don't have a choice. You live in a decent society. Do you want to go back to the Victorian era where people lived in penury?
We're already in the Victorian era.
What?
We're already in the Victorian era. 370,000 children will actually fall off the cliff in terms of poverty. Families will be...
There's other ways of paying for them. I just want to put this out to people who are watching and listening today. Do you want to pay for people to have children?
That's
Claire
not
says,
the way you frame the question, Eamonn.
What is the way I'm framing the question?
Well, do you want children not to live in poverty? Do you want children to have the right start?
Shouldn't
the Princess of Wales
parental responsibility here? You're absolving parents of all the responsibility.
No, I'm not.
What, did you not think when you were having children, can I afford this child?
No, I didn't.
Well, you should have.
Well, I did.
I didn't. I wasn't on any benefits.
People do, of course, think about that, but they also think, well, I want to have a family and have a child. Well, why should people not be able to have children? Because they're in a lower income bracket.
And be helped.
That's an appalling way to run society. That's an evil way to run society.
I agree, actually, and I don't think we're going to agree too much.
That's an authoritarian, autocratic way to run society. We didn't agree with the Chinese with their one-child policy, did we?
But we're not saying that.
That's an appalling way to run a country.
The state will help you with your first 2 children. If you take it upon yourself to have 3 or 4 or 5 children, then you ought to be thinking about it. Don't expect the state to help.
I don't think people do expect the state. Even the Princess of Wales, through her under-5s, wants to underpin society, get poverty abolished, and help educate people. And that's the way out of poverty.
But the way
not
to get
by disparaging remarks about
poverty abolished, particularly for children, is not to have children you can't afford.
Oh, and come
as Claire
on.
has said, we have an ageing population. We don't have enough people of working age in this
every
country.
Every step of the way there.
We need
right,
people
folks,
to have children.
Who are you with? Who do you agree with our commentators?
These people grow up and contribute to society.
Today, do you want to pay for other people's children?
Not the way to frame the question.
Right, well, I've just done it.
Keep saying it.
Cleverly has become the first Conservative MP to announce he will be running for the party's next leader. We had him on the show yesterday. It was quite obvious that was what he was going to do.
How was he?
But he wouldn't admit that he was going to throw his hat into the ring.
He didn't not admit.
Well, he's James not so cleverly in my book, actually, to be fair. I mean, they've got Tom Tugendhat, what's happened to him? Kemi Badenoch.
Well, they haven't declared themselves yet.
They will, though.
They will, won't
Give them
they?
time.
Yeah.
But, it's a poison chalice, I think, the leader now of the opposition, the Conservatives, because they've completely combusted and imploded by themselves. And they're not going to win the next election in the next 4 years, especially if James Cleverly is in charge. He's flip-flop. He was head of publishing. He doesn't really know what he's talking about, in my view. He's not a very decent orator. He doesn't seem to have the plan. He doesn't seem to have the answers. And all he's doing now, we're going to talk about the BB barge being, the BB Stockholm being tendered back in January 2025 to be abolished. All he seems to be doing now is tit-for-tat politics. I'm finished with that. I'm sick of that.
What do you think about the BB Stockholm barge being decommissioned in 6 months' time?
Yeah, exactly. 6 months' time. The quite startling thing is here, the head of Border Force, she's actually said that, yeah, we don't need it now because they're actually processing more people. But there's 500 men on this BB Stockholm barge. In Dorset, I think it is. Where are they going to be housed?
That's what I was wondering. If they're going to just shut down the barge, there are people on it. Where are they going to go?
There is nothing in the papers, there's nothing reported to say where they're actually going to put them or house them. They've had men commit suicide off this barge. They've had Legionella off this barge. It's
Are
ridiculous.
they going to be put back in, you know, Holiday Inns and...
Who knows?
Well,
There is no
they've got
plan.
6 months. By then, they may
But
process the
hopefully
claims.
they-
I mean, the last government was refusing to process asylum claims. So you have the numbers of people in accommodation paid for by us without me choosing to do that, going back to your point earlier on, at huge expense, 8 million a day. They weren't processing the claims. The number was just going up and up and up. I mean, it was completely ludicrous. They were saying, we don't want people to come, but effectively they're giving an amnesty to people to come to this country and stay as long as they like.
We need to see the proof, don't we?
Whereas now,
Yes.
people are processing the claims.
I'm totally for, you know, if they're processing claims more quickly, then great. But let's see the proof.
They won't be processing those claims. There's no chance.
Well,
no
but
chance.
of course they're going to process the claims. The last thing they want is 80,000 people living at the government's expense, at our expense.
Mike, they don't
no
have the
benefit
facility.
at all.
When you say process them, Mike, what do you mean? What does that actually mean?
So it's people who've
Accept
come
them
to
into
this
the
country to say, I want to claim asylum. Rishi Sunak's government said, well, we're not interested in this, we're just going to leave you be, and effectively leave them in limbo at our great expense, 8 million a day just for the accommodation, never mind all the legal fees and paying for them to eat and, you know, all of these things, paying for their kids to get educated. Now we process the claim, decide, are you a genuine refugee or you're not? If they are, they go on, they get a job, they contribute to society like anybody else. If they're not, the government seeks to return them to the country that they came from.
Well, if there's anyone
Again,
watching
not
at the
our
moment
expense.
who processes claims, let us know.
Well, there aren't.
We want to know. I know.
Then people will be watching.
Well, they'll be busy employing more people to do that.
Or busy having children.
OK, let's not go there.
Well, each are going to cost us a lot of money, which we don't have. Right, next.
OK,
and incidentally, I just want to refer you, because we're going to be talking about this later, the Irish situation and how the people are biting back in Ireland. They have had enough of immigrants, and it's really quite a worrying situation. And what we're saying here, if it's happening in Ireland today, could it happen in England tomorrow? That's the question.
Are we going to take a quick break now, then? And we'll come back and... Oh, no, we're not taking a quick break. For some reason, I thought we were. Can we talk about ice creams?
Yes.
Because this is shrinkflation or something, but the most popular ice creams have jumped up in price. They're more expensive than they've ever been. And these are big-name brands like, you know, Cornettos and Soleros. You've got this story, haven't you, Mike?
Yeah, so, as you were just saying, popular ice cream has gone up by 38%, which is a lot in the last 2 years. Obviously, food prices have gone up across the board hugely in the last couple of years since Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget. And I have to say, ice cream in the midst of it all is not the biggest deal. Because
Especially not in this weather.
It's food that people need to rely on that is the biggest deal. However, this is the story. And this is because of the price of milk going up, the price of sugar going up, and, of course, the price of transportation and energy going up hugely as well. So you will find next time you go to the shop to buy some ice cream, and we've got nice weather now, so you might want to do that.
You'll also find
it's getting
that
more
they're smaller.
expensive.
They are
Probably a little
smaller,
bit smaller than they used to as well. So the conclusion, the article I read, was buy own-brand ice cream from your supermarket rather than the big-name brands.
No, the truth about ice cream, I genuinely could live on ice cream. If you give me just one food to live on.
Really?
Absolutely. And I'm surprised at you saying it, because in places like Scotland and Ireland, the national dish is not potatoes or haggis or anything else. It's ice cream. There are more ice cream parlours in Scotland and Ireland than there are anywhere else because of the Italian migrants who came over to build the churches and everything. Why am I sinking in this blooming chair? Like, goodness sake.
No, the chairs...
Floor manager, come out here and give me another chair, will you? Because honestly, look at it. You just spend the day. You start up there and then you end up down here.
Shrinkflation, Eamonn.
Shrinkflation.
You're getting smaller.
But ice cream is the most delicious thing. I really do think it's delicious.
It is a treat.
The right one to go to is to an Italian
gelato.
Right.
Do you know the
That's
difference
tricky to do in Britain, but maybe we have some of them.
It's the way that gelato has got no cream in it, it's got little milk or whatever, and it's actually better for you. Gelato, everyone thought, well, I did, thought that gelato was the Italian name for ice cream. It's actually made in a completely different way from ice cream.
Yeah, it's not ice cream.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, there you are. You learn something new.
Yeah,
can Claire tell us...
flavour of ice cream?
Oh, mint chocolate chip.
Oh, no, seriously?
Strawberry, vanilla, raspberry ripples, hard to beat.
Well, you know that jelly sauce you used to get on top of a strawberry tart?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and you put that over
Mike, what would you add? What would your
I'm a classic vanilla guy.
Yeah.
Mint chocolate chip. No doubt about it. Can we talk about this hunky great-grandson or grandson of JFK, who's become a TikTok sensation?
And Vogue's new political expert.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knew? This is John F. Kennedy's grandson. He is qualifications galore.
There he is in one of his TikTok videos. You don't see him in a lot of his TikTok videos. Apparently, he is bare-chested because he's a bit of a hunk.
So was that Kennedy's daughter's son?
Yes, exactly.
It's Caroline Kennedy Schlossberg.
It's Caroline Kennedy's son. And he is...
he's gone viral.
He's gone to Yale. He's done the Harvard Law School thing. I mean, he's a typical Kennedy from that point.
Yeah.
He's got the big mop of hair.
Yes.
They all have.
But he is he's becoming quite a sensation.
He's got chiselled great looks. He's an incredibly good-looking lad.
Yeah.
Yep, so he's going to be Vogue's new political expert.
So isn't it interesting the Kennedy genes are still going?
Still there, and they're still strong, and they're still as gorgeous.
And one of them is he the Irish ambassador or something? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that...
Caroline Kennedy is the Australian ambassador.
Yeah, no, there's one of the lads is, I don't know, he's in Belfast anyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah, right. Before I go through the floor and sink here particularly, Mike and Claire come back and see us again very shortly, in about 40 minutes' time or so.
Shorter by the minute.
It's ridiculous, honest to goodness, it really is.
It's unusual that I'm tallest.
Yeah, we're going to get the chairs fixed. We're going to try to do all of that. And we're going to talk about the Irish crisis as well, the immigration, all that sort of thing as well. Please don't go away. See you after this.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine start out there for many of us, early sunshine, but it will turn cloudier into the afternoon with some rain coming along later. 1 or 2 showers first thing in the east, western Scotland perhaps, as well as West Wales, but otherwise most places getting off to a sunny start. Through the morning, the cloud will build and there will be further showers developing in the east of England, but there'll also be more persistent rain pushing into western Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales and the far southwest of Cornwall, where we get the sunshine in the south and southeast. 25, 26 Celsius, feeling very warm indeed. But where we've got the rain moving in, it's going to start to feel more unpleasant. The breeze picking up as well into the afternoon and evening. By this stage, the rain reaching Exmoor, Dartmoor and covering much of Cornwall. We keep the sunny spells into the evening for the east and southeast of England, but Wales is turning increasingly cloudy and wet. Northern Ireland by this stage also reasonably damp, as well as northwest England and western Scotland. 1 or 2 showers for the east of Scotland. Otherwise, we cling on to some breaks in the cloud through the evening and temperatures of 18 to 19 Celsius. Now, the first area of rain moves through Scotland, western England and Wales overnight. There'll also be reasonable covering of cloud spreading across the country overnight, with temperatures holding up into the mid-teens in many places. A warmer night compared with recent nights. But it's a dreary start to Thursday. Certainly a lot of low cloud around, especially towards southwestern parts. Some coastal mist and fog. And the rain and drizzle turning more heavy through the morning. Some outbreaks of more persistent wet weather moving through the south and southeast for a time. Further north, the rain is more showery, but it's a cloudy afternoon. And it's also going to be cooler as a result, with temperatures of 20 to 22 Celsius.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In South Yorkshire, the A61 remains closed each way along Barnsley Road at Mapplewell after an accident on Sunday afternoon. On the M40 in Warwickshire, the outside lane is closed each way for barrier repairs after an accident between junctions 12 and 11 between Gaydon and Banbury, causing roughly 3 miles of southbound queues. In Bedfordshire, the A507 is blocked westbound towards Ampthill, where a lorry is overturned off the A6 Clophill roundabout. In Herefordshire, the A49 is closed each way between Wilton and St Owens Cross after a vehicle hit a tree. Train services are suspended between Cardiff Central and the Severn Tunnel Junction because of a shortage of trains. And in Cornwall, the A395 is closed west of Launceston between the A30 at Kennard's House and Hallworthy after an accident. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. Which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, very good morning to you. Sir Keir Starmer set for his first PMQ's battle today.
As he suspends 7 Labour MPs for voting against the government.
Your views on this shortly. James Cleverly is the first official candidate for Tory leader as the process begins today.
Kamala Harris holds her first campaign rally since launching her bid for the presidency.
I will spend the coming weeks continuing to unite our party so that we are ready to win in November.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrives in Washington as he's set to address the US Congress.
Strictly scandal, overpaid stars and licence fee debates. Is the BBC in crisis mode?
Immigration bites Ireland. Sinn Féin toughens their stance on migration as locals take to the streets. We're reporting there live very shortly.
Blue skies for many of us this morning. It's not going to last. We are going to see thicker cloud later, with rain arriving by the end of the day and into tomorrow. So make the most of it. I'll have the full forecast coming up very soon.
Well, the time is 1 minute past 7 o'clock. A very good morning to you on this Wednesday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Keir Starmer expelling 7 MPs from the party for 6 months or so. This is the big row. This is over the 2-child policy. It is our top story this morning. Alison says, I'm with Eamonn and Anne on this. I do not want to be paying my taxes to fund other people's children. If you can't afford to have children, don't have them. Simple as that. Who needs more than 2 children anyway?
Well...
We do.
Yeah, but it's your choice, isn't it, by then? David says, I didn't have kids because I couldn't afford them, and now I'm expected to pay for the fecklessness and selfishness of others.
Well, you see, I have to agree with that. I mean, goodness me, you know, any time I've had a child in life, I've thought, can we afford this? Can we afford to bring this child into the world? Can we afford to give this child the living that it deserves? Why would you think anything else? Why would you go in and just say, I'm just going to have kids, they're just going to pop out of me right, left and centre, and somebody else will have to pay for them?
It's not as if the state is denying you your right to have children. The state is actually saying we'll help you with the expenses of the first 2. But if you take a decision to have a third, then surely is it really fair for you to expect the state to go on supporting.
We had two commentators on here 10 minutes ago who were basically saying, yes, we should be paying. We should be paying for other people's children. I'm sorry, count me out if that's the case. Bobby says, I'm sick and tired of paying for people who don't work. It's not about the kids. Jess says, if people want kids, they should pay for them. Why should everyone else pay? This is a theme here. We're already struggling with the population already. I wish somebody would make up their mind about population. 1 minute, we've not enough people in the country, then we've got too many people in the country. You should ask Ireland about population at the minute, and they will have a very strong answer.
We do need more children being born, though, don't we? But the trouble is, I mean, at the moment, we just can't afford to support the parents in doing that if they're having more than two.
Now, there's lots of other things you've been giving your opinion on, dressage being one of them.
I was very upset at the reports, as we know, about the former Olympian champion.
Whipping her horse.
Yes. It was a video that was taken about 4 years ago that has emerged of her whipping her horse badly. And in fact, she has admitted that it was a total dereliction of judgment on her part.
Yeah.
But I've always thought that when horses do dressage, it's so unnatural. They're basically doing little ballet steps, and they're horses, for heaven's sake. And it doesn't surprise me to learn that whipping them may actually happen. And maybe it's not just Charlotte Dujardin.
Unnatural tricks, really.
Totally unnatural, yeah. They're dancing. These big animals are trained to dance. Now, I don't know what... we've already had some people who do dressage get in touch. Pam says, I did dressage and I formed a successful partnership with my horse through love and trust, never cruelty. So I'm glad to hear that. But it sort of doesn't surprise me that in some cases cruelty does take place.
And I think it's going to affect this event, dressage.
Yeah, it really will, I think.
Strongly.
We'll look at it with new eyes, I think. Janice says that Charlotte woman should never be allowed to own a horse again. Hitting a horse 30 times on its legs is appalling. Yeah, animal cruelty.
Keep
it
your
should
views
not be part
coming
of the
in,
Olympics,
and we'll try and reflect those throughout the programme today. Let's get into this whole thing about Keir Starmer and what he's done with these MPs, expelling them from the party. He's facing his first Prime Minister's questions. James Healy is in the studio, political commentator on such things. Did he get this right?
I think he probably did. I think, look, he needs to lay down the law at the start of it. He got rid of 7 MPs who were going to be troublemakers for him. And he's really, I think, made clear that he's not going to be bounced by the Labour left on anything. The danger is, of course, is you can do that fine in the first year, your first vote, the first rebellion of the Parliament. What happens when it's sort of end of the Parliament? You know, people's loyalties can't be bought off anymore. That's the key thing, I think, is how do you deal with this? Very different to deal with John McDonnell as it is some of the people in his, new first-term intake.
Yes, you could almost have predicted which MPs would be troublemakers, couldn't you? And I suppose he must have known that from the very beginning.
Absolutely. And what's interesting, of course, is that 2 MPs who were tipped to rebel, both were absent for different reasons. So Rosie Duffield, of course, who's a big defender of single-sex spaces, she had COVID, so she missed the vote. Diane Abbott also was due to personal circumstances not there. And you can imagine, perhaps, if they'd been going through the lobbies, that might be a slightly different kind of consideration, because Diane Abbott, of course, caused a lot of issue in the election campaign with the selection problems. Rosie Duffield has been a big critic of Starmer. So them not being there was very helpful, because it just means the Labour left, and, of course, they've never been a fan of Keir Starmer.
But PMQs is going to be very interesting today, isn't it? I mean, it'll be Rishi Sunak versus Keir Starmer and others. I mean, as you pointed out, the Reform lot will be there as well with their questions. But, I mean, here we've got an obvious one, an own goal in a way, isn't it? They're going to absolutely attack him for not even being able, 2 weeks in to a new government, not being able to control his own MPs.
This is the first earliest backbench rebellion since 1945, so normally they happen at some point, but this was the first, soonest to happen in a new parliament in 80 years.
Right?
Yeah, it's the first case in a post-war scenario. I think that Rishi Sunak will take a quite measured tone. Obviously, he just had an electoral thumping 3 weeks ago, so I think that there'll be probably 3 questions on one subject, 3 questions on another, and as you say, Anne, I think you're very likely to have the 2-child benefit cap brought up. And, of course, this is Keir Starmer's first PMQs as Prime Minister, and it'll be interesting to see kind of what tone he takes, and also, really, the issues he tries to make his own, really, because now he's different in the government, very different from opposition. He doesn't have to attack, he has to defend, and that's a different skill set.
It'll be interesting to see whether the Speaker allows any of those MPs to speak.
Yeah, I mean, if he calls them for a question, potentially. I think, look, the odds are 1 in 650, so probably unlikely in the odds, if you think about it. But I think the one for reform, and, of course, we wait to see what happens with those pro-Gaza independents as well when they get a question.
But, James, also, if we look at how, if this was to be Labour policy and it had have got through or whatever, how would it be paid for?
Well, that is a very good question. It costs about £3 billion, so the money would have to come from somewhere. And, of course, as we were discussing from what you've been saying with the GBViews lot, is that it's actually quite a popular policy. I think it polled around 66% of the public back it. In the commentariat, it's a very different discussion.
So you're saying 66, two-thirds of people back this?
Yeah.
I tell you, my friend, absolutely not reflective of by what we're saying
100%
today.
from what you're hearing. Yeah, the discussion. It's popular, it costs a lot of money. This is why it's been kept for 10 years. And every time Labour's kind of gone in with this trap, they've fallen into the welfare trap, which is seen as being too kind on benefits at a time when there's no money for anything else. And frankly, do people want $3 billion in the health service? Do they want $3 billion for the two-child benefit cap? I suspect the answer is the former, not the latter.
Well, look, folks, let us know what the answer is from you. Please do let us know. James, speak again shortly. Thank you very much.
Where would you rather that $3 billion were spent?
We're crossing to Ireland now. The country's waking up to the reality of the immigration crisis. Anne and I were reporting on this at the weekend.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The Republic's main opposition party, Sinn Féin, have outlined a stricter immigration policy after a poll found that Irish voters care more about immigration than any other issue.
That's because it's out of control. Where else could it be out of control? Taoiseach Simon, he's the boss man, he's the Prime Minister. Simon Harris faces increasing pressure to crack down on what is going on. We're now joined by Irish political correspondent Ben Scallon. Ben, this story really has taken on a life of its own over the past couple of weeks, but this has been brewing for a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, several years now, really since the outbreak of the Ukraine war, when our government made a very grandiose commitment to having a no-cap policy when it came to asylum seekers. They said we will take as many as come effectively, and specifically, they said that they were bracing to accept as many as 200,000 asylum seekers entering Ireland, which for those who don't know, the Republic of Ireland's population is just over 5 million. So 200,000 in a country with a population of that size is astonishing, as you can imagine.
But Ben, where did the cockiness to say that come from? Is this because the Irish economy is in such a good place?
I think some of it is to do with that. I also think some of it is to do with the fact that for many years now, immigration has not been questioned and not been allowed to be questioned in Ireland. You know, in many countries now in Europe or North America, when you try to discuss migration, if you bring up any kind of criticism of the policy, or you say, hey, maybe this has gone too far, you get hit with all the usual labels, the ists and the phobes and the typical slur words that are used to muddy this debate and derail any legitimate conversation about it. And I think in Ireland that has been particularly pernicious. So I feel like the government almost felt obliged to go all in and say, oh, no, we'll take as many people as want to come here. Let's not discuss any kind of reasonable restrictions until it was too late. I mean, we're now facing situations where there's a village in County Tipperary in Ireland where the population of the town is 165 people, and they're talking about moving 280 asylum seekers into the town. So more asylum seekers in your village than there are locals there, which is just clearly madness. I don't know anybody, liberal, conservative, right-wing, left-wing, who would think that that was a wise or sensible idea.
You can understand the people, ordinary people, being very angry about this, because it's almost as though the politicians aren't listening to their own people.
Well, they're very explicit about that. I mean, you mentioned Sinn Féin there. Sinn Féin has just released this new policy document on the need to try and, address the asylum issue. And they say how communities need to be consulted, but they specifically also say that people don't have a veto on who moves to their area, i.e. you can't say no. So at a press event yesterday, I was asking the party's leader, Marilyn McDonald, what kind of a consultation is it? Because the government has the exact same policy, by the way. They've all used this line, oh, nobody has a veto on who lives in their area. If that's the case, then what kind of a consultation doesn't allow you to say no? The whole part of a consultation is it's to consult. I'm asking you, hey, locals, what do you think of this? Do you agree? Do you consent? And so if you've started off a consultation, but you're admitting that people are not allowed to reject what's happening, then that's just railroading by another name.
Ben, it is amazing to listen to someone like Mary Lou McDonald telling people they have no veto who lives in their area. People here that we're seeing in Coolock here and whatever are deciding otherwise. They're saying, we'll tell you, Mary Lou, what you can do and what you can't do. When is this arrogance from politicians going to disappear? It's not going to disappear at all. They've got this confidence, and this is, I mean, I don't know if this is European law that's being upheld here, or this is exactly why people in this country wanted Brexit, but this is unbelievable. As you say, 5.5 million people in the Republic of Ireland, what, nearly 2 million in Northern Ireland, and 20% of them no longer identify as being Irish. Why? Because they're not Irish, they're not from Ireland.
Yeah, I think as to the arrogance question, it's a strange misunderstanding that has arisen in probably not just this country, but many Western countries, where politicians and the political class at large seem to be under the misapprehension that they own the country, when in fact it is the citizenry of the country who own the country. You know, Ireland does not belong to the politicians. They are people who have been temporarily bestowed with the right to manage it on behalf of the people as representatives. And so this whole, you don't have a veto, you can't decide. Well, then who can decide? Of course, they think they can decide. They're the people who should have the say over this. And or if it's not them, it's the European Union, or it's this United Nations treaty, or whatever it might be. And the whole concept of, first of all, national sovereignty, or on a more individual level, the idea that citizens have sovereignty over their own destiny and the future of their country and community, has just totally gone by the wayside.
You know, it appears that we're losing control. That, you know, I don't care who you are or whatever in the world, none of us can solve the migration problem. So you've either got to decide yourself, what are you going to do to tamper with it, or are you going to leave it alone? Are you going to put up the borders and say, I'm sorry, it's very unfortunate what you're going through, but it's not our problem, or we'll only take extreme cases like those people affected by war? But goodness me, it's obvious we just can't control this.
But a government's first duty is to look after its own citizens. That's a government's first duty. And it just makes me wonder what's going to happen next. I mean, we're just going to see more and more protests.
Yes, I mean, it seems like we're on that trajectory, certainly. I find it very noteworthy that just a couple of years ago, before things had gotten really out of control, the government received a secret cabinet memo which specifically warned them that if you proceed on this path, it could easily damage social cohesion, and particularly in deprived, underprivileged communities where services are already scarce, and then you're bringing in a whole new group of people, which will just add to the demand. They were warned about this in 2022, before things had gotten out of control. They proceeded to ignore that advice and do it anyway, and now we're at the situation where we've seen multiple riots. There's these kinds of fiery scenes unfolding in working class communities all over the country. And you think, this is just ludicrous. I mean, first of all, anybody with common sense could have warned you that something like this would happen, but you wouldn't even, if you didn't want to believe them, your own trusted advisors warned you that this would happen, and you still stepped on the landmine having looked directly at it, and then you made the decision anyway, you know?
Ben Scanlon, really appreciate what you've had to say and your analysis, bringing it to us, because so many people, particularly in England, reflecting on this, and they can see
it happening here.
They can see it happening here. Ben, we'll say goodbye to you. Thank you very much indeed. And, you know, when you make out, it's interesting that Ireland, part of the European Union, is the first to really explode about all of this. But Greece,
yes,
Italy,
yeah,
Spain, this is happening all around. I mean, you just can't make out that you're the odd one or there's something wrong with you because you see this as a danger.
Well, do you remember Angela Merkel saying, we welcome all refugees?
Yeah.
And she sort of opened her arms to them and said, our country will open our arms to you. We will embrace you, I think she said. And then was overrun, practically.
Well, where's she now?
Well, it saw her out of office, really, didn't it?
So let us know what you think of this. What do you think the solution is? It's a very sad, awful situation, but there's no doubt about it, the arrogance of politicians who know better than you all the time in everything. They will decide what happens. Should they start listening to the people who live in their constituencies? People will have no veto on who lives in their areas.
Crazy
but
to have
Angela
any.
Scanlon said, she said this week that, what did she say about people will not be able to vet who lives in their area. Everyone will have to take their fair share.
Yeah.
She said as well.
Is that fair? I mean, you get the politicians you vote in, of course. So, you know, maybe you've just got to do something about it democratically with your vote.
Okay.
Should we move on?
Some other news stories.
7:18, yes. Here are the other stories that are making headlines today. And a British soldier has been rushed to hospital after being stabbed outside the Brompton Barracks in Kent last night. The victim, who's in his 40s, is said to have been in uniform when he was attacked by a man wearing a ski mask. Police have since arrested a 24-year-old on suspicion of attempted murder.
Six-time Olympic medalist Charlotte Jourdain has been sensationally banned from the Paris Olympics ahead of Friday's opening ceremony. She's a dressage champion and she stands accused of whipping her horse's legs almost 30 times in a leaked video that has caused shockwaves across Team GB and big reaction from you watching and listening.
And the royal family have confirmed plans to replace their 15-year-old helicopters with brand new models that will partially run on sustainable fuel. It comes as the annual Sovereign Grant report shows travel for Britain's most famous family topped £2 million last year.
Yeah, so thank you very much. So many stories getting you talking this morning. Will the weather get you talking, Aidan McGivern, will it?
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine start out there for many of us, early sunshine, but it will turn cloudier into the afternoon with some rain coming along later. 1 or 2 showers first thing in the east, western Scotland perhaps, as well as West Wales, but otherwise most places getting off to a sunny start. Through the morning, the cloud will build and there will be further showers developing in the east of England, but there'll also be more persistent rain pushing into western Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales and the far southwest of Cornwall, where we get the sunshine in the south and southeast, 25, 26 Celsius, feeling very warm indeed. But where we've got the rain moving in, it's going to start to feel more unpleasant. The breeze picking up as well into the afternoon and evening. By this stage, the rain reaching Exmoor, Dartmoor and covering much of Cornwall. We keep the sunny spells into the evening for the east and southeast of England, but Wales is turning increasingly cloudy and wet. Northern Ireland by this stage also reasonably damp, as well as northwest England and western Scotland. 1 or 2 showers for the east of Scotland. Otherwise, we cling on to some breaks in the cloud through the evening and temperatures of 18 to 19 Celsius. Now, the first area of rain moves through Scotland, western England and Wales overnight. There'll also be reasonable covering of cloud spreading across the country overnight, with temperatures holding up into the mid-teens in many places. A warmer night compared to with recent nights. But it's a dreary start to Thursday. Certainly a lot of low cloud around, especially towards southwestern parts. Some coastal mist and fog. And the rain and drizzle turning more heavy through the morning. Some outbreaks of more persistent wet weather moving through the south and southeast for a time. Further north, the rain is more showery, but it's a cloudy afternoon. And it's also going to be cooler as a result, with temperatures of 20 to 22 Celsius.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
So not too bad there. And not too bad if you were to pick up 30,000 quid.
Which would be very handy, wouldn't it? We're giving it away in our Great British Giveaway. Biggest cash prize of the year. Here's how you can enter.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, still to come, here's something interesting, certainly if you're in the business as we are. Is the BBC broken? We're going to be debating that because the BBC seems to have such horrendous problems at the moment. It's got the Strictly Come Dancing scandal, so-called scandal. We now hear of these rather high wages being paid to people like Gary Lineker, Hugh Edwards, etc. We'll be debating whether or not the BBC has a future.
Well,
next.
I'll just leave you with these words as we go to the break. You'll miss it if it goes. Back after this.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs Live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs Live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Somebody just said in my ear, would you like some food, Eamonn? Is the Pope a Catholic?
Absolutely, yeah. But don't forget me as well. I'm hungry too. We'll see what happens.
Anyway.
7:27 it is already.
It is indeed.
Now, the BBC, is it in crisis? They've released their annual salaries thing.
It always gets everybody hot
Which gets everybody hot under the collar. And as we were saying earlier, they're not really true. Anyway, the figures that are being put against
they're
various
much worse. Believe me, the figures are much higher than you see there, because what they don't include is, say people like Fiona Bruce. Fiona's a fine, great broadcaster. She does the news, whatever. She'll be paid by the BBC, but she does Question Time, which is an independent production, and that won't be declared in her BBC earnings. And I suspect something
and her
like
Antiques Roadshow thing,
as well.
But that's the point. You're just being given the figure that the BBC has to put out.
Yes,
which is usually the very basic. But I mean, people like Gary Lineker. I mean, he came out top again, earning over £1 million. I think it's like £1.35 million. And of course, the press are all saying, "Is it really worth it?" But I mean, he is a heck of a broadcaster, isn't he? He was a heck of a footballer.
Who would you replace him with?
Well, exactly.
And I know everybody there is and whatever. And you go, well, Gary has got the personality, he's got the cheek and the charm.
And he's got the following.
He's got the following. And, you've got to decide, is it worth 1.3 million? I suspect a lot of you will say it's not. Anyway.
But his equivalent in the States would be on many, many times that.
Yes, very true, very true. And their sport's so much more boring.
Is it? Well, I suppose it is. Well, we don't take to it, yes. It's not our sort of sport, is it?
500 jobs the BBC are preparing to cut over the next 2 years. That's typical. That's what happens. You cut and cut and cut, and the programmes get worse and worse and worse. You pay the presenters less and less and less, and they just become awful.
Yeah, and then even the BBC's big moneymaker, which must be one of the biggest, is Strictly Come Dancing. That's bereft by so-called scandal. Is it really a scandal at the moment?
Is it really?
So we're asking, is the BBC broken? This is our debate this morning. We're joined by Head of Campaigns for Popular Conservatism, Andrew Allison, who says the BBC is broken, and former BBC Royal Correspondent Michael Cole, who says the BBC still so important, and be careful what you wish for.
Michael, I'm with you the whole way, and I do say, and I look at people like you who've been gracing our screens for years on the BBC, and I will always say we would miss it if it was gone, and people don't realise that. And I could give you so many instances. If you think that satellite TV and what's available on satellite TV, that's your future, then forget it. I mean, unbelievable. That's all I'd say, my friend.
Good morning, Eamonn. Good morning, Anne. Such wisdom in one so young, Eamonn. I do admire it. Now, I worked for the BBC for 20 years, a fifth of its existence, and I hate to see it in its parlous state. It is not broken, but it is badly bent. And you know what the real problem is? The Director General is also the Editor-in-Chief. Now, Tim Davie is probably a remarkable man. He's probably great at selling fizzy drinks and programmes, but he's a marketing man. He's never spent one single day. And you need some journalistic naps in order to see that cloud on the horizon can turn into a force 10 gale in 10 minutes, unless it's properly managed.
Excuse me, are we having problems there with Michael's sound? I don't know if Michael can reboot as we just get reaction on. Michael, if you could reboot, that would be great for us.
Well, we go to Andrew Allison. Andrew, you think the BBC is broken. Do you think that's it? We're going to see it just completely de-exist? Or will there be some way in which we can save it?
In all fairness, Anne, and good morning to you and good morning, Eamonn, I did say to your producer yesterday that I don't think it is broken, but I do think it's sort of moving along there. I'm not anti-BBC. I never have been. And to a certain extent, I do agree with Eamonn that if it goes, then we would all miss it. There are certain things that the BBC does that is absolutely brilliant. Its election-night coverage, for example, was fantastic. They included all the different reports from the regional BBC political editors and the local correspondents from BBC Radio. I think my main gripe is the way that it is funded. I think it's an analogue funding system in a digital world, and the BBC is eventually going to have to work out how it is going to fund itself in the future. But I also feel that the BBC doesn't help itself either. I mean, you've mentioned the Strictly Come Dancing issues. I mean, these bullying issues, but some of them were apparently reported many, many years ago. And yet the BBC doesn't seem to have done anything about it. Now, it needs to learn from its mistakes because it seems to be in the news for all the wrong reasons at many different times of the year. So I think the BBC needs to learn from its mistakes.
But Andrew, do you know what I would say, Andrew? Whatever, when you look at the model of Strictly, and you take it and you say it's been copied by Dancing on Ice on ITV, I would be very surprised if the same issues did not pop up with ITV, but they're not of interest to everybody at ITV because we don't pay for them.
That is true, but you would hope that ITV would handle it better than the BBC has. And if ITV doesn't handle these issues better than the BBC, then they've got a problem as well. But I mean, you know, widening this out, all broadcasters have a problem because more of us are turning into different channels. I mean, GBNews wasn't around just over 3 years ago. Many people are watching this programme this morning. More people are watching streaming services now. And if you look at the viewing figures, say, for example, the major subs for EastEnders, Coronation Street, Emmerdale, those type of programmes, the viewing figures have fallen sharply. And therefore, the advertising revenue has fallen sharply for the commercial broadcasters. So I think all sort of terrestrial broadcasters at the moment are facing similar problems.
Mm-hmm. Just we have similar problems of a different kind maybe here. Michael Cole, unfortunately the connection's not good and we won't be getting it back, Andrew, so you're on your own, just so you know that.
Yeah. Well, wait, is there a future for the BBC without the licence fee, maybe becoming a subscription service, or do you think that would just make it dwindle and die?
Well, I think the BBC needs to decide what it wants to do, how it wants to move forward. I mean, does it want to offer a core service? So does it want to offer things like news and what we would call public service broadcasting, and then put the rest onto basically a digital platform, an internet platform? Now, of course, the argument would be that there would be many people that would not be able to access some of those services because they don't have an internet or broadband connection at home. But of course, those numbers are falling year on year. So I'm not saying that you could do that immediately. And I know it's been said to me many times. I remember Sir John Whittingdale when he was Culture Secretary, and prior to that, chair of the Culture, Media and Sport Committee, said that you cannot block the Freeview signal, and I accept that. But I think that as we move into the future and more people are online, you can put more BBC services on there and you can charge a fee for them.
OK. Andrew, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your input and getting people to think about that one. I do think, people should think about what they call to come to an end, because without it, life would be very different. I watch a lot on Gold, on the satellite channel Gold. And you end up watching all these BBC sitcoms
things,
like Fools and Horses and Dad's Army and Goodness, it goes on and on and on. And you think, why don't they make those things anymore?
And I watch a lot on BBC iPlayer, which I think is the most fabulous resource.
I agree. And BBC 4 is a brilliant channel as well.
And we would miss it terribly if it wasn't there.
The iPlayer, you're right, is an amazing
It's an incredible resource.
Yeah.
BBC Education, those whole departments are something of which I think we in this country should be really, really proud. But we allow, I think, particularly the press, to get and the government, very particular governments, to really try and whip the BBC all the time.
All the time. And I have to say, I know I was televisually educated, not with books and whatever in our house, but in television. And you had programmes when I was young and when I was at school, like Panorama and programmes like Horizon. And there were so many things, and even Blue Peter, whatever. And there was so much education to be gleaned, and people talk about, TV's brain rotting and whatever. There's some really good stuff.
No, you have to just choose the best.
If you look for it.
And you won't get the best if we let the BBC decline, I think.
Well,
it's a shame.
You may think differently.
I think it's a resource of which we should be proud.
Coming through, we got Mike and we got Claire, and they're going to have a wing-ding argument over the newspapers and disagree with us about lots of things. But see what happens after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In South Yorkshire, the A61 remains closed each way along Barnsley Road at Mapplewell after an accident on Sunday afternoon. On the M40 in Warwickshire, the outside lane is closed each way for repairs after an accident between junctions 12 and 11 between Gaydon and Banbury, causing roughly 4 miles of southbound queues. In Bedfordshire, the A507 is partly blocked westbound, where a lorry overturned off the A6 Clop Hill roundabout, causing delays towards Amtill. In Herefordshire, the A49 is closed west of Ross-on-Wye between the A40 Wilton roundabout and St Owen's Cross after a car hit a tree. On the M1 in London, the northbound entry slip road from the roundabout off the North Circular at Junction 1 is closed because of an accident causing queues. And in Cornwall, the A395 is closed off the A30 west of Launceston after an accident. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, GBNews.com.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, it's just coming up to 20 minutes to 8 already, and joining us to go through what's making the news in the newspapers, broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon and former Labour advisor Mike Buckley. Thank you for coming back.
You're very welcome.
Right, Claire, tell us about this new phone, which might be better, more child-friendly.
Absolutely, and they're enlisting the help of parents to enable these phones to get them back on track, to get them for what they're supposed to be. Communication. We don't need our children to have smartphones at all. And I'm all for banning them in schools. And I think this human mobile device company, HMD, they want to make the phones more affordable in price. They've got a strong emphasis on quality and quantity and use of them. And
so
I think
they'd be cheaper and simpler.
Absolutely. So you're thinking about the Nokias, you're thinking about the bricks, and that's the way they want to go. But I think it's great that they're actually contacting parents that are wanting them to help them navigate the horribleness of phones, mobile phones, and children and their brains.
What about, Claire, if you get children who are saying, Mummy, Daddy, I feel really left out here.
Tough.
The technology isn't as good as Jimmy's phone, who sits beside me.
Well, I think that's the strength of parenting and the strength of your children that you're bringing up, that they realise that what you're as a parent, you're doing the best for them.
And what age would you say you can move to full smart mode?
Not until you're doing your GCSEs, at least.
16?
16.
Yep.
If they make them cool, they've got to make them cool, really. But if they make them cheaper, then more children will have them. So maybe you won't get this sort of rivalry.
The rivalry, when I was at school, the rivalry was what trainers you had, or you know what scarf or what designer you used. But that all comes back to strong schooling, emphasis on school uniform, and making everybody the same, regardless of financial.
Do you know the other thing that really bugs me?
What?
Parents who sit and say, "Oh, my Mary's dating Jimmy, so she is their boyfriend, girlfriend, and how old are they? They're 9 or they're 10. That really irritates me. The other thing that no child should be allowed to have is a boyfriend or girlfriend before they're 16.
I agree.
Yeah, before they have those O-level exams. You're looking at me, Mike. What?
16's quite old, you know.
Don't be ridiculous.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Your wee bones are hardly formed at 16.
I think if you're... people, honestly, these kids, they're having sex way before they're 16. I mean, not all of them.
Doesn't
but a
make
lot
it
of them
right.
are. I'm not suggesting it makes it right, but it happens. And if we don't want it to happen, then we need to make different decisions as a society, don't we? But I have no problem with it, but with a platonic boyfriend or girlfriend, or indeed boyfriend or boyfriend,
But it's not platonic.
in this day and age, from, say, the age of 12 or 13 upwards, this is how you learn, isn't it? It's how you learn to form relationships, learn to have fun together, learn to get on, learn to have an argument, break
business
up,
of the phone.
be heartbroken. It's part of growing up.
To make a phone more child-friendly, and what parents probably would like in a child's phone, you'd have to take the video off, wouldn't you? There has to be no screen.
It has to, yeah.
It has to be no screen.
The old-fashioned...
Because that's what's causing all the problems with, kids texting horrible pictures to each other. And the bullying that goes on.
That's a good idea. So you take the camera out. Yes.
As a minimum.
Yeah.
I think that might be
Disable the internet and take off the camera and use it functionally, i.e. to call.
The porn king beside us here, he disagrees now. He's what?
No, I mean, I'm just thinking, well, what's feasible? I mean, personally, if it was my choice, I would ban mobile phones, or at least smartphones, from anybody under the age of 16 because of the damage that it's doing to kids' brains.
Mike, it amazes me that they're allowed in schools.
It amazes me as well. But we are where we are as a society. We've got to move a long way to get to that point of having a ban. And I think that a blanket ban, so that all the kids are then the same, well, none of us have got a mobile phone, so it's all fine. Then you can grow up without all that peer pressure, without all that fear, without all that anxiety, without taking photos of things that you shouldn't take photos of, and all of it. That would be the ideal. But moving from where we are to there is a long way. I hope we can get there.
It's not as long as you think, I don't think, because...
I think they've got to be brave and take
a more severely limited phone would be a good idea.
Parents are the
This is a step
primary
in the right direction.
educators and schools are the secondary educators, and schools have to underpin parental responsibility and enable parents to do their fundamental job to bring children up with virtues and to bring children up in this mobile, horrible, technological world.
Now, I remember
and keep them safe.
When I was at school, the 68 Olympics, the 72 Olympics, the 76 Olympics, these were all massive things, and we all got books with stickers in them, and this was the in thing. You'd listen to the radio, what was going on and whatever. So I don't know how the kids, or if the kids are into the Olympics and that happens, but Friday, it all begins.
Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? I mean, there's something about the Olympics, because it is just this massive, global moment, and you just watch it. I remember watching, when it was in London in 2012, you just watch the ability of these people, and obviously they spend years, their whole lives, getting to this point of just excellence, and it's just mind-blowing and staggering, and it is inspiring.
Well, look, let's
to see them doing so well.
And let's talk about it. We'll take a short break, and we're going to be back, and we're going to do the build-up, and we're going to talk about who's attending the Olympics and whatever right after this.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Karen Stevenson was born in Stoke-on-Trent and read music at Trinity College, Cambridge. She's played cello with many of the world's great orchestras under the batons of some of the most renowned conductors, and she joins me now to discuss her career and the importance of music in education. Tell me about that. What is your role at the Philharmonia?
My role at the Philharmonia is number 2 cello. I've been there for about 15 years. Sometimes I play number one cello as well, which is a great opportunity for me.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I often think what a very difficult life it is to be a professional musician.
I make a living out of it. It is definitely possible. Yeah, we don't really like it when we get into a taxi and someone says, "What's your day job?" Because we work really hard.
I was kind of making the opposite point. Not that you'd also have a day job. I think the perfection that is required for a professional musician is extraordinary. On the whole, we are intolerant of mistakes in classical music.
Yes, we are.
And I just wondered whether you don't become very frustrated with a world in which everything else is imperfect.
You are only as good as your last concert, Michael. That's how it feels. It is a lot of pressure. Sometimes we will say, OK, a pint for every wrong note or something, but depending on the piece of music, that could be quite dangerous.
How many hours a day do you have to practice?
You have to practice much more when you're younger, I think, when you're learning. I think this is really important. And when you're at music college. I'm a busy, I'm travelling, I have a family. I can't practice as much as I used to, so you have to rely on your experience. What I really wanted to say is that there's been a lot of fear-mongering about classical music being in decline and it not being relevant. And I really wanted to say that I don't think that's the case. Our audiences have increased. They're the highest they've been in 10 years.
The People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hello again. Before we go on with the newspapers, let me just give you an update on the soldier who was stabbed at the Gillingham barracks in Kent overnight. The Defence Secretary, John Healey, has taken to X, Twitter, and said, "My thoughts are with the soldier and his family who deserve privacy at this difficult time. On behalf of the government, I wish him a swift recovery." And that, of course, comes as the soldier, who was in full uniform, is now fighting for his life. It was a brutal knife attack last night outside of the Brompton barracks, around 6 o'clock yesterday evening, apparently. I think it's completely and utterly abhorrent that our young men and women in uniform should be treated like that. I can't believe it. They make themselves vulnerable just by wearing their uniform.
Let's go back to Claire Muldoon and Mike Buckley. And before the break, Mike, we were just touching on the Olympics, which open on Friday. And you're going to tell us about the reaction and the conditions.
I will. Well, I mean, just to say, I'm just shocked by this story of this poor young man who's been attacked, and obviously thoughts are with him and with his family as well, and hope for a swift recovery. But yes, on the Olympics. So yeah, I mean, we seem to get this story every time we get around to the Olympics. We talk about where they're going to stay and what their beds are like. I don't know why we do it. Really.
I don't know. It always comes up, doesn't it?
It does always come up, and I don't know why it always comes up, because clearly they're going to sleep somewhere and accommodation is provided. I mean, this is kind of the story, really. Anyway, this time they've been given cardboard beds. I presume this is because they're temporary and because they're easy recyclable, which is obviously a good thing. And the story is that they've been built to be strong enough for three of them to hang out together of an evening, which is...
Wait a minute, sorry.
Which seems like overkill.
Wait a minute. You're saying not just two in that bed, you're thinking that bed can take three.
Well, this is what we're told, yeah. I mean, you would have thought two would be fine, but anyway, this is what the decision the designers have tried to make. So there are going to be over 14,000 sports people there, and they're all going to be hanging out and having a lovely time together, which is nice. It's nice.
They're being given free condoms as well, aren't they?
200,000 of them, yes, which is a lot of activity.
It is, isn't it? But I suppose that's an acceptance that these are young people who will
good to take precautions.
Yes.
So lots to celebrate.
No, exactly. There's Tom Daley showing off his bedroom and his cardboard bed.
Yeah. He's going to have a great time.
Princess Anne is there as well.
Yes, on to perhaps happier news. Princess Anne is there. She looks like she's going to be there for the whole 12 days. She's going to meet athletes and she's going to meet the French President, Emmanuel Macron. And Princess Anne, of course, is well known to be our hardest working royal.
And an Olympian winner herself.
And the mother of an Olympian as well.
12 days is a great thing. So she obviously
it was an equestrian event.
And do it with great skill and ability, as she always does.
She was very good horsewoman, very, very good. And I think she was BBC Sports Personality of the Year.
That's right, she was.
As well as a result of this. But Claire, we're all recoiling from a story of a British athlete, Charlotte Desjardins, who's a dressage rider. And this is a shocking story about cruelty to her horse.
Well, the actual story is shocking on quite a lot of levels. One, obviously the video that has been released, but the video was taken over 4 years ago. The video has been released by a Dutch lawyer. Now, the Netherlands have got quite a strong dressage contingent for the Olympics this year. And also, if that had come to light at the time, her suspension would have been over, dealt with, done, and she would have been able to take part in this year's Olympics. So sadly, she's not going to be here this year. She has withdrawn herself, and the International Federation for Horses and Dressage has said that she must be banned. But for me, there are overreaching questions here. We've got the Strictly fiasco going on at the moment in terms of treating people well or not standing on their toes, or I feel that I've been mistreated. And the horse is here. I mean, who knows what goes on? At the end of the day, they are Olympics. They are elite sportsmen. They do their job very well, thoroughly.
Doesn't mean you beat the hell out of a horse. And the thing is, her preparation is 4 years, right? So the last Olympics finish, and then she's in a 4-year run-up to getting ready for this one. So she should be banned.
I haven't seen the video. I don't know what the video is going on. And the fact that it's been released, I mean, two questions. Why film it?
Claire,
why
don't defend her. Don't defend her.
Why not?
Cruelty to an animal. It's not absolutely...
Do you think she's the only one, Eamonn?
No, but that doesn't make it right, though, does it?
Well, what happens then? How many years has this been going on?
We ban more of them.
And what happens to the sport then?
Well, dressage is a sport. I mean, honestly.
Well, it's in the Olympics.
I tell you what, dressage we're going to hear a lot less of as a result of this, because if there's any credence to this video,
there will be more.
The accusations, there'll be more.
Well, what are you going to do?
Will be a no-go area.
Ban horse racing then, when horses fall at the first flat. You know, and over the jumps that they have.
Well, it's a debate, isn't it?
The big calls for that.
Well, what do you do?
Well, you don't do things that involve cruelty to animals.
Deliberate cruelty.
And it may well be that we have been far too complacent for far too long about these issues.
But why then? Why not take umbrage with the person that released the video? Why not say, well, you've waited this long. Your country's actually...
It's nothing to do with it.
Well, I think it's a lot to do with it.
The horse is suffering. The horse is suffering.
I think there's a lot to do with it.
Well, don't agree.
I think the timing's interesting, but she still did it, and she has admitted to doing it.
And she's admitted to doing it, and she said sorry.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sorry. You lot are back. You two are back. Claire and Mike are going to be back in 40 minutes' time, and we'll get more from them and maybe more reaction. What do you think should happen to the Olympic dressage eventer? OK, time for an update on the weather situation. We say good morning to Ed McGivern.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine start out there for many of us, early sunshine, but it will turn cloudier into the afternoon with some rain coming along later. 1 or 2 showers first thing in the east, western Scotland perhaps, as well as West Wales, but otherwise most places getting off to a sunny start. Through the morning, the cloud will build and there will be further showers developing in the east of England, but there'll also be more persistent rain pushing into western Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales and the far southwest of Cornwall, where we get the sunshine in the south and southeast, 25, 26 Celsius, feeling very warm indeed. But where we've got the rain moving in, it's going to start to feel more unpleasant. The breeze picking up as well into the afternoon and evening. By this stage, the rain reaching Exmoor, Dartmoor and covering much of Cornwall. We keep the sunny spells into the evening for the east and southeast of England, but Wales is turning increasingly cloudy and wet. Northern Ireland by this stage also reasonably damp, as well as northwest England and western Scotland. 1 or 2 showers for the east of Scotland. Otherwise, we cling on to some breaks in the cloud through the evening and temperatures of 18 to 19 Celsius. Now, the first area of rain moves through Scotland, western England and Wales overnight. There'll also be reasonable covering of cloud spreading across the country overnight, with temperatures holding up into the mid-teens in many places. A warmer night compared with recent nights. But it's a dreary start to Thursday. Certainly a lot of low cloud around, especially towards southwestern parts. Some coastal mist and fog, and the rain and drizzle turning more heavy through the morning. Some outbreaks of more persistent wet weather moving through the south and southeast for a time. Further north, the rain is more showery, but it's a cloudy afternoon. And it's also going to be cooler as a result, with temperatures of 20 to 22 Celsius.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News. The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In South Yorkshire, the A61 remains closed each way along Barnsley Road at Mapplewell after an accident on Sunday afternoon. On the M40 in Warwickshire, the outside lanes closed each way between junctions 12 and 11 from Caden to Banbury for emergency repairs after an accident. Recused for around 4 miles southbound. In Herefordshire, the A49 is closed each way west of Ross-on-Wye off the A40 Wilton roundabout after a car hit a tree. On the M1 in London, the northbound Slit Road from the roundabout at junction 1 from the North Circular at Staples Corner is closed because of an accident. There are queues on approaches to there, although you can still access the northbound M1 from the westbound North Circular, and train services are suspended between the Severn Tunnel Junction and Cardiff Central, and that's because of a shortage of trains. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Sir Keir Starmer is set for his first PMQs battle today.
He has suspended 7 Labour MPs for 6 months for voting against the government.
Well, James Cleverly is the first official candidate for Tory leader as the process begins in a matter of hours.
The Defence Secretary, John Healey, has condemned the shocking stabbing of a young soldier in broad daylight last night.
Kamala Harris holds her first campaign rally since launching her bid for the presidency.
I will spend the coming weeks continuing to unite our party so that we are ready to win in November.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrives in Washington as he's set to address the US Congress.
And a royal record as profits for Britain's most famous family more than double in a year.
Blue skies for many of us this morning. It's not going to last. We are going to see thicker cloud later, with rain arriving by the end of the day and into tomorrow. So make the most of it. I'll have the full forecast coming up very soon.
1 minute past 8 is the time on this Wednesday morning. Good morning to you. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Ann Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Mrs. Ann, lovely to see you here today, and just want to pass on to you the lovely views of the viewers and the listeners who have you, who are just saying hello, because they didn't think you worked during the week.
Well, I don't usually.
I'm just glad to see you looking happy and nice.
I don't know what I'm doing here, really, but there you go. Tell you what, another lesson to be learned is never eat chocolate in a commercial break, because I've got chocolate smudges all down.
Do you know who told me never to eat chocolate while you were on air? Lionel Richie. He said to me that it creates a sort of mucus at the back of your throat. It's like drinking. You should never have milk or coffee or anything like that.
Singers do that, yeah. I used to be the mother of choir boys, and the choir master said you must never give them chocolate before they sing, because it does exactly that. Yeah, it's not good for singing voice.
Right, pets. We're talking about pets. We're talking about cruelty to pets today. We're talking about cruelty to an Olympic horse, as it were, as well. But you've unearthed something.
Well, there's a fascinating piece in today's Daily Mail, big piece there, about how empathetic our pets are with us. And this professor has written that we form a very real bond with particularly dogs, but cats too. And this bond is... it's not unusual. In fact, it's with most people who have a lovely pet. And the pets can sense when there's something wrong with you. And even when there's distance between you. And there are some lovely stories in here of people. There's this one, very sad story, really, about a terrier who loved this particular young man in the family. He went off to the Falklands to fight in the Falklands War. He was on HMS Coventry, and the family knew when he was in danger, because the dog became very, very agitated and upset.
Could sense that.
Yeah, and there was one particular time when the dog was beside himself with anxiety, and the family sort of was suspicious that their son might be in mortal danger, and they found out that he was at exactly that same time.
Goodness
all those miles away, the dog knew that something was going on, and there were lots of stories like that where the animal will suddenly stop their normal behaviour and start wailing or refuse to go out or know that there's something wrong, and it's usually because the person they have that special bond with is in some sort of danger, or there's some sort of a problem. And of course we know that dogs can tell illness, can't they? Yeah. And they say in certain cases a dog can tell whether somebody's going to die or not.
Oh, dear, dear, dear.
Yeah.
Certainly I've seen a lot of beautiful videos on Instagram about the love animals have for people, and what Anne says, how they can sense when something is wrong as well. And one day we'll open up that communication. We'll be able to decode what animals are saying to us, and what they'll be able to decode what we're saying to them.
We are tremendously arrogant to think we're the only species that
can communicate.
Exactly.
Look at us, we can't even communicate. We're paid to do it.
Yeah.
But if you've got a story to tell, if you've
Love
got
to hear
about
from
your animal and that love and that bond, we would appreciate that. That would be very nice. Meanwhile, we'll get into the news, and a soldier has been rushed to hospital after being stabbed outside the Brompton Barracks. The Brompton Barracks are in Kent.
Yes, the victim, who's in his 40s, is said to have been in uniform when he was attacked by a man wearing a ski mask.
Police have since arrested a 24-year-old. They've arrested him on suspicion of attempted murder.
The Defence Secretary, John Healey, has taken to X, or Twitter, and said, "My thoughts are with the soldier and his family, who deserve privacy at this difficult time. On behalf of the government, I wish him a swift recovery."
We're now joined by former Met Police Detective Peter Blexley with his take on this one. Peter, I'm sure, like most of us, you're very shocked at this whole situation.
Yes, I'm utterly appalled, and of course, my best wishes go to this injured soldier, and I hope that he makes a full and swift recovery, although he is, of course, in a very, very poorly way. I think we need to rewind to 2013 for a potential link to this story. Yesterday, a vile, repulsive preacher of hate, Anjem Chowdhury, was convicted of terrorism offences, and he will be sentenced in due course, and rightly so. In 2013, two savages brutally killed a soldier, Lee Rigby, in Woolwich. And one of those murderous beasts was a close devotee of Anjem Chowdhury, no less. I fear that perhaps yesterday's attack may be a response to Chowdhury being convicted by somebody who may well have been brainwashed like the people that killed Lee Rigby were. I have no evidence yet to prove this, but it does seem more than merely coincidental, perhaps.
Yes, it's the first thing I thought of too. It was almost like too much coincidence. Yet again, a man in uniform, somebody of whom we should be intensely proud, I feel, in this country, attacked by another young man, by the sound of it, wearing a ski mask. You know, a cowardly, horrible, brutal attack again.
Yes, indeed. Just like the murder of Lee Rigby, that was cowardly and brutal and close to his barracks in Woolwich in South East London. So there are some horrendous, hideous links, of course. Lee Rigby sadly died. Let's hope this soldier pulls through. Lee Rigby's murder left behind his young widow and his son Jack, of course, who then had to spend the rest of his life not knowing his father. A true tragedy and a brutal murder, and now another attempt, it would appear, to murder our courageous members of the armed forces, who I'm sure you and I and many of your viewers and listeners have the utmost respect for.
But Peter, would it be true to say, and does one sense that these people, just by wearing their uniform, make themselves a target?
Quite possibly. I'm sure that the military will now be issuing directions to those who are living in barracks or other well-known military accommodation to take precautions. But of course, if this is the actions, and I say if, of a deranged lunatic, the likes of which murdered Lee Rigby, then of course it is extremely difficult for our military to move around in uniform, because those who hate those who would protect our democracy and the rights for us to enjoy everything that we like, if they want to do them harm. Once again, my thoughts are very, very much with this soldier and all those who love him.
Thank you for those thoughts, Peter. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
And as we said, it's a 24-year-old man who's been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder.
Sir Keir Starmer will lead his first PMQ since becoming Prime Minister today.
Yes, the Labour leader is going to face off against the current Conservative leader, Rishi Sunak.
Now, this happens as nominations for the Conservative leadership begin. Former Home Secretary James Cleverly already announcing his campaign to become the new leader of the opposition. Let's see what Catherine Foster, our political correspondent, can add to that one. Good morning, Catherine.
Yes, good morning, both. It's going to be quite something, this PMQs, isn't it? Because, of course, we're used to seeing these two men face off against each other, but now the roles are reversed. And it's still quite discombobulating, frankly, this massive change of power in Westminster, because only a couple of days ago we saw Sir Keir Starmer, the new Prime Minister, refer to Rishi Sunak, the old Prime Minister, as the Prime Minister, which was... He said old habits die hard, and certainly people around the Labour leadership, in some senses, it's still all a little bit surreal. But, you know, Sir Keir Starmer, he hasn't even been Prime Minister 3 weeks, and already he has had a rebellion, because last night 7 of his own MPs voted for this SNP amendment to scrap the cap on child benefit. Now, we know that Sir Keir Starmer can be ruthless, and he proved it, because rather than give them a gentle ticking off and saying, just don't do this again, he's actually suspended the whip from the lot of them. So people like the former Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell under Jeremy Corbyn, the former Shadow Education Secretary, Rebecca Long-Bailey under Jeremy Corbyn, and others have all had the whip taken off them for 6 months, and at that point it will be reviewed. Now, of course, it didn't make any difference to the outcome, because Labour have got a huge majority, but the thinking is basically to nip this in the bud. Because they have such a huge majority, perhaps backbench MPs may be thinking that they can get away with sort of going their own way on vote. So this is sending a very clear message. Don't even think about it, because if they give way now, who knows how many will get a taste for rebelling. Meanwhile, with the Conservatives, James Cleverly has already thrown his hat into the ring for the Conservative leadership. Nominations open this evening. They've got to get 10 MPs to support them. We expect probably half a dozen candidates or more. James Cleverly saying he believes that he's the best candidate to unite the party, something rather easier said than done. Also touting, of course, the fact that he's been Home Secretary, Foreign Secretary, and indeed was party chairman at the time that Boris Johnson got that 80-seat majority back in 2019. Of course, that seems like a very, very long time ago now.
Yeah, it really does. And it's going to be fascinating, as you say, seeing them up against each other, but from different sides of the House. I mean, that just shows how politics can change so quickly.
Yes, it really does. And I think both of them, it's quite noticeable, seem to be enjoying themselves much more now that they've switched roles. Of course, you would expect that from Sir Keir Starmer, who said that, he hated being in opposition. But Rishi Sunak, too, seems more relaxed, seems to be doing quite a decent job of being leader of the opposition, which is just as well as the party are keeping him in post until November the 2nd, although now he's just acting Conservative leader rather than actual Conservative leader. But yes, he seems more relaxed. Sir Keir Starmer seems more relaxed. It will be interesting to see what Rishi Sunak will go on, because, of course, the new government's record isn't even 3 weeks old. So he's got to be careful, because he doesn't want to be attacking policies that are from the previous government, i.e. his own.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting exchange.
Certainly will be, Catherine. Thank you very much.
Well, he'll
indeed.
go for him, won't he, on the fact that he can't control his own backbenchers and has had to suspend 7 of them already.
I can't control the way I'm speaking today.
No?
Yes, because remember we talked about Lionel Richie and don't eat chocolate.
Yes.
Or whatever.
It's the chocolate. You should. We should not have eaten chocolate.
We should admit to you that they keep us going. We've got a marvellous director here. He's my favourite director.
I wonder why.
Seb comes out with a little box and he has them. These are what are called Freddos. They're little mini
They're
chocolate
very
bars.
nice.
And you see 2 of them here. I ate both of them. So they were for me, but that was just to keep us going.
Well, you've got to keep going somehow, haven't you? Yeah.
But as soon as I started talking, then afterwards, I was.
Yeah, it's
doing
not.
all
Yeah,
that.
have a cup of coffee.
Hopefully, it's gone by now, and we'll give you a weather update. We'll see how cloudy that's going to be today in McGivern.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine start out there for many of us, early sunshine, but it will turn cloudier into the afternoon with some rain coming along later. 1 or 2 showers first thing in the east, western Scotland perhaps, as well as West Wales, but otherwise most places getting off to a sunny start. Through the morning, the cloud will build and there will be further showers developing in the east of England, but there'll also be more persistent rain pushing into western Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales and the far southwest of Cornwall, where we get the sunshine in the south and southeast, 25, 26 Celsius, feeling very warm indeed. But where we've got the rain moving in, it's going to start to feel more unpleasant. The breeze picking up as well into the afternoon and evening. By this stage, the rain reaching Exmoor, Dartmoor and covering much of Cornwall. We keep the sunny spells into the evening for the east and southeast of England, but Wales is turning increasingly cloudy and wet. Northern Ireland by this stage also reasonably damp, as well as northwest England and western Scotland. 1 or 2 showers for the east of Scotland. Otherwise, we cling on to some breaks in the cloud through the evening and temperatures of 18 to 19 Celsius. Now, the first area of rain moves through Scotland, western England and Wales overnight. There'll also be reasonable covering of cloud spreading across the country overnight, with temperatures holding up into the mid-teens in many places. A warmer night compared to with recent nights. But it's a dreary start to Thursday. Certainly a lot of low cloud around, especially towards southwestern parts. Some coastal mist and fog. And the rain and drizzle turning more heavy through the morning. Some outbreaks of more persistent wet weather moving through the south and southeast for a time. Further north, the rain is more showery, but it's a cloudy afternoon. And it's also going to be cooler as a result, with temperatures of 20 to 22 Celsius.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Questions have been raised about your cardboard beds. Barry is a former fire officer, was in the fire and safety industry, and he said, well, as somebody in this industry, I'm shocked that they come up with the idea for the Olympics of cardboard beds.
Yeah, it's they're obviously treated against fire. They're treated against damp as well.
Fireproofed.
Yeah, they're fireproof.
So wait a minute.
They're damp-proof. They are cardboard and they are recyclable, but they're treated for everything.
You can't make them wet, but they are fire retardant.
They're fire. Yeah, exactly. That has been thought of. Apparently, there they are, the cardboard beds. Actually, I've been looking online, and you can buy cardboard beds.
Why would you want to buy a cardboard bed?
Well, because they open up like a honeycomb, and you can fold them. You can fold them into just a box.
So like a temporary bed.
Yeah. So you could keep it, but they're very, very rigid and firm. So you could keep it in a box in a spare room or something. But if you wanted to use it as a bed, you just open it out like into this sort of honeycomb, bung a mattress on the top, and you've got a proper bed.
There you go.
Okay. I've got a spare room that's crying out.
Otherwise, besides that, you could win £30,000 in our competition.
Yes, you could buy a few beds with that.
Yes, you could buy a bedroom with that. Goodness me. Do whatever you want with it. It could be yours.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. Which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Best of luck. Still to come, Buckingham Palace's annual accounts have been released, showing all about the coronation and how much that cost us. We'll be taking you through it next. You're watching GB News Breakfast with Eamonn and Anne.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Should Prince Harry have accepted an award named after a US war hero at a glitzy ceremony last night? People begged him not to, but he did it anyway. It's time for tonight's head-to-head. Well, Prince Harry paid tribute to the eternal bond between mother and son as he appeared alongside his wife, Meghan Markle, at the glitzy ESPY Awards, dubbed the Sporting Oscars last night. The Duke accepted the Pat Tillman Award, named after a US war hero, for his Invictus Games work. But Harry's decision to accept the award was shrouded in controversy after more than 76,000 people signed a petition demanding he reverse his decision. Well, speaking last night, Harry paid tribute to Pat Tillman's mother, Mary. But that comes after Mary Tillman slammed his decision to give Prince Harry the gong, saying, "I am shocked as to why they would select such a controversial and divisive individual to receive the award. There are recipients that are far more fitting. These individuals do not have the money, resources, connections or privilege that Prince Harry has." So tonight I'm asking, should Harry have actually accepted the award? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/your say. Tweet me at GBNews and make sure you take part in our poll. But going head-to-head on this now, a former Royal Butler, Grant Harold, and the journalist and broadcaster, Laurie Turner. Thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Laurie, I will start with you. I mean, The mother didn't want Harry to have it, but he did it anyway. What do you think?
I just think it's incredibly tone deaf. He seems to have an amazing ability to not read the room. It wasn't like this was a surprise because the opposition to him getting this award had been growing. So he had the chance to say, actually, I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to accept the award, but he didn't.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
We're going to talk about the royal family and profit from their property and land holdings. It's more than doubled to...
a record £1.1 billion. There's money in land, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Yeah, that's a
Anyway, it's this big report. It includes the cost of the coronation and all the visits made by the royals all over the past year. Who has been looking through it for us? But GB News reporter Charlie Peters. So it's complex, I expect, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. The sovereign grant, it's £86.3 million for this year. It's stayed the same for a few years now. And that's based on a percentage, 15%, of the income that the Crown Estate gathers. That's £16 billion property portfolio. All that cash goes to the Treasury and they send back a portion that the royal household can use to spend on the day-to-day running of their various costs and their official duties. So what did they spend that money on? That's the real question.
What do we get stuck into first?
In Buckingham Palace, there were significant costs. You can manage the running of staff and the pay. I think we have a graphic to display some of those costs now. So the King's coronation was £800,000, and we also had...
Is that all?
Well, I think that's a pretty good value for money. Quite a lot of that was resizing the imperial crown on those various robes. Wow. So you have the expenditure was 89.1. That's higher than the 86.3 I mentioned, and that's slightly higher because they get additional income, about £10 million from the gate receipts from the various palaces, and that number has shot up since the end of the COVID experience. Royal engagements, 4.2 million. I think that's pretty good value for money, most would say. And then the monarchy per capita, what each taxpayer pays per person, it's £1.29. That's including the refurbishment of Buckingham Palace. When you go to the core grant, which is around £50 million, what they're given, that 15%, that's 77 pence per person, per taxpayer in Britain, going towards the royal family. So
that's good value. I think that's good value.
Yeah, they're going to show that as good value for money. That's definitely the perspective they're putting across. But there are quite a few interesting costs involved in this sovereign grant review. There's been a lot of focus on the monarchy being green, being more diverse, trying to modernise the monarchy, possibly in keeping with modern political trends, which the monarchy hasn't always done in the past. And they've referred to their rising in sustainable aviation fuel. Now, a core part of the cost of the monarchy is travel. As we know, we had a significant cost last year, a trip to Kenya by Her Majesty's costing over £170,000, another trip to France costing a similar amount, trying to reduce not only the financial cost of that travel, but also the environmental cost as well.
The trip to Kenya was £170,000. I mean, I think that's pretty good reason. It's quite cheap, actually.
For a charter plane and the separate plane for staff as well.
And ceremony that has to go with it.
Of course.
And putting them up in wherever they stayed and all the rest of it. That doesn't seem too expensive to me.
Of course, but in a cost of living crisis where people fear that we're missing meals and there are increasing concerns about energy supplies for families, heating and eating are political issues now. With that in the spotlight, the royal family are obviously extremely keen to demonstrate that value for money at all levels. Every penny has to be justified and every impact on the environment as well. And so they're promoting the rise of sustainable aviation fuel. King Charles, when he was the Prince of Wales, was famous for having a car running on cheese and wine, as it were, the biofuel input. And it's now understood that there will be increased levels of that same fuel, biofuel, going into the new helicopters that they've brought in, and also possibly the state Bentleys. So whatever they are replaced as in the future, those state cars that carry around the Royal Majesties and also the princes and princesses, those cars could be running on similar fuel that King Charles has been driving in his Aston Martin for 50 years.
True. It's interesting that this particular report looks into how much they're costing us, but doesn't say how much they make for us as a country. Because, I mean, I never know what the figure is, but the sheer fact that we have a royal family and that we have big ceremonies and things actually brings an awful lot of money into Britain, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, with these reports, and there's so much detail, I mean, there are dozens of pages about cash, bluntly, people can often get caught in the cost and the price of everything, but the value of nothing, failing to look at the bigger picture and the value of the royal family and what it brings to the nation, and also how it increasingly reflects the political impulses of ordinary people, as we're talking about these cost of living pressures, these green pressures. And also, you know, people might say that they shouldn't be so engaged with modern political trends, but they are focusing very keenly on diversity. Now, not only for the gender pay gap, but they're also focusing on their ethnic pay gap. They've made reports there that that's closing. They've published that for the first time. But also the percentage of staff that come from an ethnic minority background within the royal household, that's 11.4%. Now, they have a target in the royal family to hit a 15% background of ethnic minorities within the household by 2025. So essentially, we have the royal family having quotas for minorities. I think that's quite controversial, actually.
Yes,
it's quite controversial at doing that.
There's somebody, presumably a department within Buckingham Palace, that has to think of all these things.
Yes, well, and there have been a couple of race rows in recent years in the royal family, of course. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex accusing the royal family of racism in that very charged Oprah Winfrey interview. Now, critics might ask, is a racial quota in your staff the right way to go about it? But that's something they're proud to. That's something they're proud to tout in this recent report. They're very keen on that perspective.
Did you have to go to Buckingham Palace to be briefed on all of this?
I did yesterday. Although
did they give you a cup of tea and a biscuit?
Yes, and I'm happy to report that I swirled the teaspoon very gently without touching the edges.
Oh, very good. That's the way it must be done? Because they don't give you much in the way of cups of teas and biscuits.
We do all this talk about the money they earn and the money they have and things. I tell you what, my experience of circling the royals, interviewing the royals, being in Buckingham Palace and Clarence House and various other places all over the last 40 years, I wouldn't want their life.
No.
There's nothing about their decor. There's nothing about their sofas. There's nothing about their televisions. There's nothing. You don't walk in and say, wow, look at this. This looks as if they earn 26 million quid a year. It doesn't. I mean, I can't see the joy. I can understand the privilege and the travel and the experiences and all that they get. But at the end of the day, if you're a young person, you would want certain things in a new house starting out.
And possibly the freedom to live your life without the graft of hundreds of royal duties, official duties every 50 seconds.
I wouldn't envy them at all.
Very good, Charlie. Thanks very much indeed. Very interesting stuff there, Charlie.
I cannot get over the coronation only costing like 800 grand. I thought it'd be in the millions. I suppose certain things don't get factored in, like
the police costs, etc. Yes, this is the cost from the household in particular. It's pretty costly to get a crown sorted out these days.
Yes, clearly. I'm glad I don't have the worry.
We've got Claire, we've got Mike. They've got the newspapers. They're going through the top stories of the day and getting their reaction and your reaction to that right after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In South Yorkshire, the A61 remains closed each way along Parnsey Road at Mapplewell after an accident on Sunday. The M42 from Staffordshire into Warwickshire is partly blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 10 and 9 near Tamworth, causing queues. On the M40 in Warwickshire, the outside lanes closed each way for repairs after an accident between junctions 12 and 11 between Gaydon and Banbury, with 7 miles of southbound queues towards there. In Herefordshire, the A49 is closed each way off the A40 west of Ross-on-Wye after a car hit a tree. On the M1 in London, the northbound entry slip road from the roundabout at junction 1 from The North Circular at Staples Corner is closed because of an accident with queues towards there, and train services are suspended between Cardiff Central and the Severn Tunnel junction, and that's because of a shortage of trains. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's look at the front pages on this Wednesday morning. This is how they are stacking up. Daily Telegraph, first of all, it leads with something we're going to discuss very shortly. GPs threatening to see fewer patients per day unless the government agrees to the latest pay demands.
The Express leads with BBC boss Tim Davie apologising for the Strictly bullying scandal. That's something we're going to be discussing throughout the morning as well.
Same story for the Mirror. Strictly Come Dancing fans fear for the future of the show. Well, I wouldn't fear too much.
No, I wouldn't either.
What else have they got that's going to top
Well,
the most popular show on TV?
Yeah. The notorious extremist Anjan Chowdhury leads the Daily Mail. They're asking why he was freed in the first place to spout such hate.
And there's the horse beating woman there that Claire Muldoon adores. Well, anyway, I'm just letting you tell you, there's nobody that agrees with you.
Watch it. Oh, I disagree. There are some, actually.
Where?
I agree on Twitter. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Claire. Discipline is needed.
Discipline?
What
discipline on a horse?
Disciplining a horse, you know, discipline is good. Even, you know, we're going to cover Strictly in a minute. They wouldn't know discipline if it came up and whipped them.
Ooh, right, OK.
That's Claire Muldoon, and Claire joins as well the former Labour advisor, Mike Buckley. Very nice to see you as well, Mike. Claire, could we begin with the GP threat?
Yes, let's.
So they're basically saying, right, we are going to get tough on pay negotiation, and it will involve seeing less patients as a result.
Yeah, from 37 appointments down to 25. Bear in mind, these GPs are all partners, only work 3 days a week and earn in excess of £153,000. They're forming a collective. I mean, I didn't realise GPs saw patients now. I thought it was all remote.
I haven't seen one for ever. Ages.
And actually, on that, on the back of some more research published, that 24 to 35-year-olds are seeing 9 times more GPs for appointments for minor ailments than 9% of over 64s. It's ridiculous. These youngsters don't know when they're born. They don't know how to live. They don't know how to take a paracetamol. Oh, I don't feel well. Oh, call the GP. There's always someone else to help.
Well, they're lucky if they can get to see a GP.
Well, clearly they can. I think they're using up all the appointments. It's ridiculous.
I don't understand what's going on with GPs. Why they... Apparently, we are told they're dreadfully unhappy in their job. And they obviously feel they're overworked. And yet we, as patients, feel the same way. We feel as though we're not being given the service that we were always promised.
I think the difficulty is Dr. Google. I think a lot of people Google their own ailments and their own symptoms and of healthcare and say, well, look, I've got this, I've got that, I've got that. What's wrong with me? I mean, it goes back to the old Tommy Cooper joke. Remember, doctor, I'm feeling ill today. Oh, I feel like a pair of curtains. Oh, don't be so silly. Go over to the corner and pull yourself together. I think a lot more of that should be done and said.
Well,
Don't you?
No, I don't. I think
well, there's a surprise.
I think we should be supporting anybody who wants to be a GP and actually saying to them, whether you're a teacher or whether you're a GP, these are fantastic professions.
Yes.
And we should be encouraging you and pay you the going rate for this. And I think GPs are totally overworked in the amount of appointments they have. So they'll get 7 minutes to see you about your
Which is not enough.
the day. Of course it's not enough.
So it goes back to the...
So we either need more GPs or we need to pay them more to make the job more attractive.
Or why can't we just...
We probably need both of those things. But it's also important, I do just want to say this because it is important, if somebody is concerned about their health, they should approach medical professionals, because we all know people who wait too long and end up with bad cancer or end up with heart disease or end up with some other ailment. I was just talking to a friend of mine yesterday whose husband very sadly had a stroke and he's going to be all right. But, you know, they had to approach medical services immediately.
Well, a GP wouldn't have helped in that instance. They had to call 999.
Well, yes, they did. But still, it was right that they approached medical services instead of waiting to see how it all worked out. You know, you're basically saying people shouldn't go to the doctor if they feel ill, and I'm saying it's really important that they don't.
Well, unfortunately,
if you notice that you've got a mole...
Completely, I'm not saying that at all. What I said was people should be realising that GPs are there for front port of call in an instance where you are not feeling yourself. But a lot of people, and it has been proven, that are going to the GPs with nothing wrong with them. And they're taking up vital appointments.
It's very important, if people are concerned about their health, that they approach a medical professional. One of the things that the government has announced since they came in a couple of weeks ago is that they are going to be shifting provision into the community and taking money away from hospitals and making sure that we do more in communities and more in prevention.
They're kicking the can down the street.
Pharmacists more. No, they're not.
They are, and the pharmacies
were acting to improve the nation's health, which hasn't been done for the last 15 years.
You don't need to raise your voice, Mike, but the reality is that pharmacists were used post-COVID and pre-COVID as front port of calls as well. You had a passport as a mother. You could take your child for nits, calamine lotion.
Well, that's a great thing, but pharmacists are obviously very well educated. They can do more than that.
That has been used all along.
Last year
it has, and last year they were given the licences to actually prescribe antibiotics as well. Teresa Coffey brought that in. So for me, it's just pushing the can, kicking the can down the street.
But most people aren't aware that pharmacists can do that and still go to a GP. So there's clearly more that can be done. There's more that can be done in the community by using other health services as well. And obviously, we need to shift long-term from treating acute disease to prevention, which is why it's important that people approach health services as soon as they possibly can if they're concerned about something.
I'll approach them responsibly. That's what I would say.
Well, I agree with you from that point of view that the government make up this thing that, if we could have pharmacists that do all this. Pharmacists are already overworked, and they're a private organisation who are there for money. That's what they're there to do, and they may earn more money by prescribing than they do for diagnosing or whatever it happens to be. The fact remains there are not enough pharmacists, there are not enough GPs, there are not enough people in the health system to keep it going. And then we've got this problem of these youngsters who maybe perhaps are not as resilient as previous generations.
Well, it appears that no one's resilient these days.
Do you think that's COVID?
No. It's namby-pambyism. It's people not realising that life sometimes is tough and sometimes you've just got to get up and get on with it.
Do you remember the days when GP used to come and visit you?
And do you know what else, Anne? They knew the family. They knew the community.
I can still remember the doctor's name.
So can I.
Dr. Cannon. That is as well something Labour said they're going to bring back the family doctors, that people will be able to see the same doctor.
I mean, that would be so wonderful.
Which is important because it's better just for us relationally, but it's also important so that the doctor then has some awareness
to have a one-on-one relationship with the doctor.
Makes such a difference.
Think on that, everyone. We've got to go to the break, and we'll be back very quickly with more from Claire and Mike.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy.
is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And this week, it's disabled adventurer Nick Wilson and rocket engineering director Elliot Dyson-Barber from the Institution of Engineering and Technology.
Yes, earlier this month, Nick Wilson summited Mount Snowdon unaided. The first time this has been attempted with the help of an engineered electric mobility chair called the Rock Climber.
Tell us what you did, when you did it, and why it's so amazing, because it's the first time this has been done, isn't it?
You feel lazy, you should try being me, going up a mountain and just pressing the accelerator. these poor buggers had to go and come up behind me. It still hasn't sunk in properly, you know, and to be the first disabled person to do it during Disability Pride Month is... I couldn't have asked for anything else. But it's all possible because of Rock Engineering. You know, they've been working on this for the past 2 years to create this machine. I wouldn't be here because I was struggling a lot with loneliness and isolation. I was very suicidal, and they literally saved my life with this project.
The whole thing came around by accident, you know, meeting Nick, and he kind of highlighted some issues to us in terms of his accessibility, and he you know, he lives in Toaster near where we're based, and he came down the high street and sort of said, I can't even get into the shops in the high street.
So, Nick, you just mentioned that the kind of place you were in before doing this, you were lonely, suicidal. Yeah. What was it like when you finally managed to scale Snowdon? Because I've done it on foot, and just being for anyone, being in nature and fresh air.
The one word that I think I've used throughout this is freeing. It is when you're so reliant on drop curves. It's freeing that you're not reliant on a hard-standing path or drop curves, wherever. You can, in rock climb, you can literally go anywhere you want. Yeah. And freeing is the big word, and it's amazing.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hello again, Claire Muldoon and Mike Buckley are still with us. We've got lots of time to look through the newspapers. Leaving GPs to one side, let's talk about the threat of war, Mike, because this new army chief has said we've got 3 years to get ready for war.
Yes, he has. So he's talking obviously about Russia and Ukraine. His estimate and guesstimate, I have to say, I think, is that the Russia-Ukraine war will come to some kind of conclusion, but he thinks that Russia will seek some kind of revenge upon the West for the fact that we've all supported Ukraine. Obviously concerned about a possible Chinese invasion of Taiwan, continuing concerns about Iran, North Korea, etc. So pointing out that the world is not a safe place, and I think we all know that because we all see the news. But he's also pointing out that our military capabilities are not where they need to be to take the action that we may need to take in the future against one or all of these threats. So he's saying that we need to increase our ability, A, so that we could fight in a war if we had to, but B, so that we've got a more credible deterrent, which is a call, of course, to the current government, which has announced a defence review, which I think is going to conclude early next year. And the government as well have said that they will get our defence spending up to 2.5% when that's affordable to do so. So it's good to see a new army chief in post and calling out the situation as it is now, but also saying, you know, we need to take action to protect ourselves and indeed protect our neighbouring countries in Europe as well in the future.
How do you think that review will go, the defence review? Keir Starmer seems to be sort of very realistic about things at the moment. He's sort of taking it on the chin. He knows that there are big financial problems to solve.
Yeah, he does.
And he hasn't just sort of done the usual lefty thing of saying, well, we shouldn't have an army. We shouldn't be ready for war.
No, not at all. No, I think he's very realistic.
He seems to be very realistic,
and
doesn't
John
he?
Healey, the Defence Secretary, is incredibly realistic as well. I mean, they're very aware that we live in an unsafe world. They're aware that we have, in the past, been a big player on the military and the defence front in Europe and indeed within NATO as well. And they want to see Britain step up to the plate and do our bit in the world. And they're right.
It's a very distressing outlook, though. I mean, it's realistic, but it's very distressing, isn't it? Talking about the world being almost a more dangerous place than ever.
Yeah, but ironically, it was never, ever, ever point of argument in any of the hustings. Defence was completely overlooked.
Absolutely.
Completely overlooked.
Was it
wasn't even
overlooked or just
discussed.
accepted?
I just don't think anyone wanted to talk about it. The reality is the RAF have been doing reconnaissance in Taiwan for the past 5 years. So we've known always what the issues are, and we've known always what the issues are going to be, but it was never, ever dealt with, and it was never dealt with before the election either. I mean, the trouble with Russia, China and Taiwan have been rumbling for years. The point of our immigration and net migration in this country is a direct result of Afghanistan and wars thereof. I mean, I can't believe even we're discussing it now, because they need that 2.5% to build these holes. It's a no-brainer for me. It has to be done. We have to enforce our defence. And we're, living in times when soldiers don't even have the proper equipment or the proper uniforms to do their jobs. We can look at the £800,000 that was spent for the King's coronation and think, my goodness, everything looked beautiful. We do pomp and ceremony extremely well here. We're very proud of our history. It's time to move on and deal with the present, though.
One wouldn't historically have expected a left-wing government to be so supportive. I wonder what the mood of the country is. Would they be prepared to see us spending more on defence?
I think they definitely would. I think people are aware that we live in an unsafe world, and people do want to see us step up to the plate, not only in Europe but further afield as well. But we do need to make sure that the UK is playing its part, and indeed, as other public services were underfunded over the last 14 years under the Conservatives, the military was underfunded, or we lost large numbers of people, or we didn't invest in the equipment. So that is going to be turned around under this government, and this government will take things seriously. But it is certainly the case, actually, that Labour governments in the past and Labour people in the past, I mean, remember Clement Attlee was Deputy Prime Minister in the Second World War and was seen to play such a good part in that the country voted Labour into government in 1945.
Yes, true.
What about the attitude, Claire, towards the long-term sick? This is on the front page of
the Telegraph.
The Times. No, it's the Times today. Yeah. They're doing that, and they're talking about a fundamental reform of a crazy benefit system.
Well, it is a crazy benefit system, and Alan Milburn has come out, and one of his reports and one of his tasks when he was taken over to do this role was to investigate the economic inactive in the population. And he's saying the long-term sick should be forced to seek work. That's a Conservative view, is it not? Well, were the Conservatives wrong? Was society wrong to indeed look to the reasons why, the socio-economic reasons, the political reasons, the long-term sick reasons why people are not working? And he's saying, the GPs are the first point of call, and this is why this story is so important to tie in with what's happening now with the GP surgery, because they're not going to be seen. They're not going to be able to be shown the reasons and the process to go out and get a job. And he's actually saying, Milburn's actually saying, that the NHS should actually capture some of these people and help them back into work.
Is that what they're saying? That long-term sick, the very nature of that phrase...
2.8 million people.
But the very nature of that phrase means they're sick. Too sick to work?
Well, we don't... That's the whole thing, is that the nuance in the reasons why they're sick. Are they mentally ill? Are they feeling a bit anxious? Are they, what is wrong? But I think it goes down to the benefit system, because the benefit system will say, you cannot work if you subscribe, if you've ticked 3 of the boxes, say, OK? I'm making it a lot simpler than it actually is. But those people can actually do different other jobs. But in order for them to get the benefit, in order for them to live, they need to keep. It's almost as if the benefits are keeping them down. And until we've got a benefit system that's fair, and until we've got a benefit system that works, and I use that word metaphorically and literally, then nothing is going to change.
But also, if you have declared yourself sick and you've got a track record of being sick, what employer and what type of jobs would be open to you? What employer would actually offer you a job?
Well, isn't it ironic that the NHS is supposed to care for people? Why wouldn't they be taking people on? So they've got the labour force there to support them.
But is that labour force dependable? I mean, if they are long-term sick?
If they're long-term sick, then they're long-term sick. But people have to be helped. There's no point in just labelling people.
That's where you bring in the GP problem.
Yes.
If some of the long-term sick, anyway, could get a better relationship with their doctor, get to see their doctor.
Yes.
They may be able to find a way through to health.
Yes.
And then we look at stories, Mike, like the HS2 and the £460 million station in Birmingham, which will sit largely unused as a result of it being axed.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, just on the long-term sick, I was very pleased to see Liz Kendall, who's Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, saying that she wants to give more help to people who are long-term sick, so move away from a punitive approach and just find out what help and support people need to get back into work, which is the right thing to do, and I think will lead to better results.
What impresses me about this government at the moment is they've clearly put some long-term research into health, particularly.
They have, yeah.
You get this impression that from Wes Streeting, from others, and in this case Alan Milk, they've obviously done their homework. They've been there. They've actually seemed to be trying to understand the problem rather than just.
And they've spoken to people in the NHS rather than just sat in a room and decided on them as on their own.
So far, so impressive.
No, I think they're doing really well. But I mean, this station is another problem inherited from the previous government. So obviously, HS2 was originally going to go up to Manchester and then up to Leeds as well. The Leeds section was scrapped, and then a year ago, or that was in last autumn, wasn't it? Rishi Sunak scrapped the Manchester section as well. However, the government is still committed to building this station in Birmingham,
even though it's not needed.
Even though it's not needed, so it's going to cost almost £500,000.
Ridiculous.
Now, of course, it may be the case in the future this government or a future government goes back to the northern section of HS2. And there are lots of arguments for that. I mean, one of the arguments at the moment against the current plan is that it's actually going to reduce the number of seats going between here and London and Manchester because of the HS2 trains being smaller than the existing trains but going on existing lines because the HS2 line won't be built. So the current plan doesn't seem particularly sustainable. But certainly at the moment there's a lot of money being spent on this station in Birmingham. And in the other parts of the northern leg of HS2, it's be more expensive now to cancel it than to go ahead.
It's not the stations that need the work, it's the actual rails and the trains that need work. I went up to Leeds on Thursday for one of my daughter's graduation on Friday, and the train was delayed. They removed some of the carriages, then we were all set in like sardines. It was ridiculous. So I would far rather they scrapped HS2. It's a ridiculous thing. It's a complete white elephant.
It's not at all. It's going to create capacity that the country needs for the future because it's got to get people off roads and onto rail.
And invest in the proper ways of carriages, of trains, get them back up and running, and then they can
Well, you need to do both, but there just isn't enough capacity because we've got a growing population. More people need to use the trains. There isn't enough capacity on the rails that we have. We need to move more freight onto rails as well. We need more train lines
they're going
in the
to
future,
stop
whether it's
carrying
HS2, whether it's
Royal Mail on trains, aren't they? We discussed that a couple of weeks ago. So I would argue, actually, that freight is diminishing. We need people on trains, and we need the trains to work.
It's increasing greatly. And actually, we need to bring the post back onto rail. It's ludicrous to put it on the roads.
But we talked about this when New Labour came in, that we must put more freight on the railways and get it off the roads.
Which
overnight. It's ruining our roads.
It has happened, but we need to do that more in the future because it's so much more sustainable.
But to build a station that we don't need...
Exactly.
For
well, hopefully we will use it in the future.
£460
I mean, I suppose that is the hope. But yes, apparently it would cost more than £460 million to cancel it, so we just need to carry on.
Yeah, how do you justify this? I mean, you know, some parts of the country I end up around, well, I'm thinking, is it Watford and whatever, and I'm driving, and I see this bit's abandoned. This was HS2. This was HS2, and it seems such an awful waste. I mean, I hope it was the right decision, but I tend to agree with you, Mike. The obligation should be to take traffic off the roads and to make it easier for people to get around in trains and to stop working on a Victorian class system, you know. And
which is what we have, and other nations don't. I mean, you go to other nations and they have brand spanking new railway systems that work and they get you there on time and they're modern and they're effective and all of it.
Get the freight off the roads. It's ruining it for the rest of us.
She said, get the freight off the roads, just in case.
Is that what I said?
Yeah, you did say that. Oh. So get the freight. It sounded like you didn't say that, but anyway, they both begin.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yes, right.
No,
Here's the weather.
Catch up with the weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine start out there for many of us, early sunshine, but it will turn cloudier into the afternoon with some rain coming along later. 1 or 2 showers first thing in the east, western Scotland perhaps, as well as West Wales, but otherwise most places getting off to a sunny start. Through the morning, the cloud will build and there will be further showers developing in the east of England, but there'll also be more persistent rain pushing into western Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales and the far southwest of Cornwall, where we get the sunshine in the south and southeast, 25, 26 Celsius, feeling very warm indeed. But where we've got the rain moving in, it's going to start to feel more unpleasant. The breeze picking up as well into the afternoon and evening. By this stage, the rain reaching Exmoor, Dartmoor and covering much of Cornwall. We keep the sunny spells into the evening for the east and southeast of England, but Wales is turning increasingly cloudy and wet. Northern Ireland by this stage also reasonably damp, as well as northwest England and western Scotland. 1 or 2 showers for the east of Scotland. Otherwise, we cling on to some breaks in the cloud through the evening and temperatures of 18 to 19 Celsius. Now, the first area of rain moves through Scotland, western England and Wales overnight. There'll also be reasonable covering of cloud spreading across the country overnight, with temperatures holding up into the mid-teens in many places. A warmer night compared to with recent nights. But it's a dreary start to Thursday. Certainly a lot of low cloud around, especially towards southwestern parts. Some coastal mist and fog. And the rain and drizzle turning more heavy through the morning. Some outbreaks of more persistent wet weather moving through the south and southeast for a time. Further north, the rain is more showery, but it's a cloudy afternoon. And it's also going to be cooler as a result, with temperatures of 20 to 22 Celsius.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In South Yorkshire, the A61 remains closed each way along Barnsley Road at Mapplewell after an accident on Sunday afternoon. On the M42 from Staffordshire into Warwickshire, there are southbound queues after traffic was stopped because of an accident between junctions 10 and 9 from the A5 at Tamworth to Curdworth. On the M40 in Warwickshire, the outside lanes closed each way for repairs after an accident between junctions 12 and 11 between Gaydon and Banbury. Southbound, there are 7 miles of queues. In Herefordshire, the A49 is closed each way off the A40 west of Ross on Wye after a car hit a tree. On the M1 in London, the northbound entry slip road at junction 1 from the roundabout at Staples Corner is closed because of an accident with queues towards there. And train services are suspended between the Severn Tunnel junction and Cardiff Central because of a shortage of trains. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. Which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, very good morning to you. Sir Keir Starmer set for his first Prime Minister Question Times battle today.
Yes, and he, of course, has suspended now 7 Labour MPs for voting against the government.
Meanwhile, James Cleverly is on the first official candidate for the Conservative leader as the process begins in a matter of hours.
The Defence Secretary, John Healey, has condemned the shocking stabbing of a soldier in broad daylight.
Kamala Harris holds her first campaign rally since launching her bid for the presidency.
I will spend the coming weeks continuing to unite our party so that we are ready to win in November.
A royal record as profits for Britain's most famous family more than double in a year.
Blue skies for many of us this morning. It's not going to last. We are going to see thicker cloud later, with rain arriving by the end of the day and into tomorrow. So make the most of it. I'll have the full forecast coming up very soon.
9:01 is the time in this Wednesday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Ann Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Being so good and getting in touch today.
Yeah, it's got some fascinating views, actually. But just looking at Kamala Harris there, it's interesting that some people are pointing out the fact that, you know, in America they have to vote somebody in and just hope they've got somebody with charisma and what's needed. In Britain, not only do we have that system, but we also have a royal family. And a lot of people have been looking at the figures we were giving about how much the royal family makes for us, how much they cost us. And Adrian says, I'm a royalist, worth every penny. They bring in tourism and it would cost far more for a president, and then we'd probably get somebody like Blair. Yes.
And some support coming out for Kamala Harris as well. Kamala Harris is a very capable candidate in spite of what some people are saying. Stephen is one of those people that are saying she's a woke, empty vessel with nothing but word salad to say.
Well, I just wonder whether she has been kept under, you know, a lid, as the Biden lid has been kept on her for a long time, and whether we actually haven't seen what sort of a woman she is, what sort of a candidate she really is. It'll be over the next few months we'll get much more of a taste of her and see what she's worth. But she made a very good speech yesterday, and you just look at it and think, gosh, she could be the next president of the United States. Yeah, she's a woman, and it's about time they had one, isn't it? And she's also not white, and she's not a white old man. You know what I mean? It could be refreshing if she's up to the job. And we will obviously, she'll be tested in the next few months, won't she? It'll be fascinating to see her debating Donald Trump.
Meanwhile, here at home, a British soldier has been rushed to hospital after being stabbed outside the Brompton Barracks in Kent last night.
Yeah, the victim, who is in his 40s, is said to have been in uniform when he was attacked by a man wearing a ski mask.
Police have since arrested a 24-year-old on suspicion of attempted murder. The Defence Secretary, John Healey, has taken to X and said, my thoughts are with the soldier and his family who deserve privacy at this difficult time. On behalf of the government, I wish him a swift recovery.
Well, earlier on, we were joined by the former Metropolitan Police Detective, Peter Blexley.
Like the murder of Lee Rigby, that was cowardly and brutal and close to his barracks in Woolwich in South East London. So there are some horrendous, hideous links, of course. Lee Rigby sadly died. Let's hope this soldier pulls through. Lee Rigby's murder left behind his young widow and his son Jack, of course, who then had to spend the rest of his life not knowing his father. A true tragedy and a brutal murder, and now another attempt, it would appear, to murder our courageous members of the armed forces, who I'm sure you and I and many of your viewers and listeners have the utmost respect for.
Absolutely, and it's just a terrible tragedy unfolding yet again in this country. Well, we'll learn more and we will keep you informed. Lots of people getting in touch about GPs. They're getting very aerated about it. Why aren't doctors' surgeries open 7 days a week? We don't only get ill on weekdays. True.
Yeah, but that is very true. I mean, I think the whole national health system needs to look at what's geared towards the weekend and what isn't. And that's a very good point. We just don't get ill on weekdays. In politics, Sir Keir Starmer will lead his first Prime Minister's questions since becoming Prime Minister. That's happening today.
Yes, the Labour leader will face off against the current Conservative leader, of course, Rishi Sunak.
Now, this happens as nominations for the leadership begins with the former Home Secretary James Cleverly already announcing his campaign to become the new leader of the opposition.
Whatever happens, it's going to be a very interesting Prime Minister's questions, with both gentlemen having been used to different sides of the block. They're actually going to be in different positions, but still facing off against each other. Fascinating. Shall we join now Shadow Education Secretary Damien Hines? A very good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Morning.
Before we get on to the subject of the bish-bash politics that might be happening a bit later today, what's your reaction to this terrible news that a serving soldier in uniform has been so viciously attacked?
Well, it's terribly, terribly shocking news. Our hearts obviously are with the family, and it's a very, very worrying time, of course. I think it's also right, and we've been reminded of this rightly, that we shouldn't go to speculating about further aspects of the case, about what motivation may have been, and so on. But it is a very shocking incident to hear about, very concerning, and as I say, our thoughts are very much with family.
I think people hear this sort of news and wonder what on earth is happening in our country, that such vicious, cowardly acts can be taken against somebody who's a serving soldier, who's serving our country and should be revered, not attacked. What on earth is happening?
Well, look, you are quite right, and our armed forces are the very best of us, who, wearing the King's uniform, put themselves in harm's way in our defence, the defence of our freedoms and our country. And as I say, it's a deeply shocking thing to hear of. It's also right, I think, that we don't go to speculating about what motives may have been involved or any other aspect. But rightly, everybody is very shocked by this and very much thinking of the family. Clearly, a very, very worrying time.
Damien, what about the leadership race? We're going to find out much more today. Have you got your money on anyone?
I think I'm not sure many politicians are betting these days, Eamonn. Look, we'll have a number of candidates. We'll have good candidates. We don't yet know who they all will be. We will know pretty soon. And I think it's very important to have a good debate. I think it's right, actually, that we've got a substantial period of time to have that debate, and not just hearing from the individuals, that is obviously important, but also using that time to reflect soberly and with humility on what's just happened in the election, where we've had a bad defeat. And also, thinking about the years prior and making sure we're learning all the lessons from that. So I think, look, it's a really important time. It's really good that we take our time and we have that debate, and we'll know exactly who the candidates are before too long.
What's it like for you sitting on the other side of the House now? And how do you think Prime Minister's questions is going to go today?
Well, to state the obvious, it is clearly very, very different being on the opposition bench. It's not where we wanted to be, obviously. But we do also know we've got a really important constitutional role, a really important responsibility in our democracy to hold the government to account. We recognise the fact they've won the election, they've got a big majority, they've got a mandate, but it's also really, really fundamental that they are scrutinised in what they do and they're held to account for what they deliver. And that is now our role, and it is a role we intend to take on with full commitment and do it absolutely as effectively as we can. PMQs today is going to be very different too. Obviously, we're used to seeing Sir Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak, but on opposite sides. But this is PMQs, although it's a particular sort of part of our parliamentary proceedings. It's a spectacle in some ways. We have many hours of debate in Parliament that are very different in flavour. But PMQs does have this sort of unique role, and that is also part of holding the government to account. And so we'll wait to see it at noon.
Sir Keir Starmer's held, a good few MPs to account by suspending them for 6 months or so. What do you think of the action, the decisive action that he's taken at this early stage?
Well, look, I think that's normal, right? If you vote against your party, you vote for another party's motion. In this case, Labour MPs voting for an SNP motion, you lose the whip, and that is normal. I think the bigger question is, what are some of the dividing lines, some of the disagreements within the Labour Party? They've done pretty well in keeping that, pretty much under wraps for the last few weeks and months coming up to and in the general election campaign. But there are difficult decisions for them to make. Look, they've known what the public finances are, and they've also known what their spending intentions are for some time. But they've managed to dodge the question of which taxes they're going to put up to be able to do the things that they have said they want to do. They're not going to be able to dodge that forever. And that is going to cause divisions and difficulties in the Parliamentary Labour Party. And look, we'll have to see what that is. That's for them to sort out, for them to come forward to the British people and account for themselves.
What would you suggest and what would you suspect will be the most interesting questions asked of Keir Starmer today? Do you think he'll be pushed on where the money is going to come from to pay for any of his ideas?
Yeah, look, without doubt, there are big questions about tax. Look, this came up a lot in the election. The questions came up a lot in the election. The answers did not. And that cannot be dodged forever. The leader of the Labour Party, the Prime Minister, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, they are going to have to say what they intend to do. And there's been a lot of this kind of pitch rolling going on, saying, the finances are worse than we thought. No. You knew what the finances were. They were published. The Office for Budget Responsibility publishes the numbers. Everybody was able to look at those things equally. They've been doing a lot of this, it's worse, so we're going to have to raise taxes. They are going to have to come clean pretty soon with what they plan, what probably they've been planning for some time. They're going to have to come clean with that. And yes, that is a really important set of questions hanging over politics right now.
Damien Hines, Shadow Education Secretary, thank you very much for your time this morning. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So let's join our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who must be looking forward to PMQs today. It'll be very interesting to see how it goes, won't it, Catherine? She's there somewhere. There you go, Catherine.
It's going to be the first time since
Oh,
hello. I don't know whether you could just hear me then. I was started to talk before. It's going to be very interesting because these two men have switched roles, and it's actually going to be the first time since 1997 that a former Prime Minister goes up against a sitting Prime Minister as leader of the opposition. The last time was John Major with Tony Blair after that landslide a very, very long time ago. So I expect that Rishi Sunak will obviously take a pop at Sir Keir Starmer over party discipline. The fact that this rebellion yesterday, it was 7 who voted for this SNP amendment, but there were another 42 Labour MPs that didn't vote. In fact, it's the biggest rebellion since a King's or Queen's speech since 1946. So quite a lot of history being made. But I also expect that Rishi Sunak will... it's all about money, as Damien Hinds said. But Rishi Sunak will want to point out that the legacy that the Conservatives have handed over, that things are in fact getting better, that inflation is coming down, that the cost of living crisis is beginning to ease, that net migration is set to fall, etc., etc. And of course, on the other hand, likely that the new Prime Minister is going to be saying, oh, you know, things are absolutely terrible, so much worse than we were expecting, paving the way, of course, potentially for tax rises. And as Damien Hinds said, and as Paul Johnson of the Institute for Fiscal Studies has said again and again and again, this saying, oh, we didn't understand how things were, it's much, much worse than we thought. The books were open. They were able to see this stuff before. So, yeah, it's going to be a big day in Westminster this lunchtime.
Well, appreciate you on previewing it, Catherine. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there.
Yeah, they wanted the job, but they've got it now.
They certainly have. Still plenty of time to grab your chance to win £30,000. It's the Great British Giveaway Competition. It's our biggest cash prize of the year.
What would you do with all that extra cash? Don't just dream, get stuck in. Here's how.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Still to come, Buckingham Palace's annual accounts have been released, showing how much the coronation cost us and you. We'll be taking you through all of that next. You're watching GB News Breakfast with Eamonn and Anne.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we've got quite an extraordinary story to talk to you about now, because a triple amputee war hero is launching a bid to become the first to sail across the Pacific Ocean non-stop, solo and unsupported.
Craig Wood was blown up as a teenager by the Taliban in Afghanistan, but now he's hoping to change the perception of disabled people and raise money for other limbless veterans like himself. And Craig joins us now. Morning.
So, Craig, you are extraordinary. You are planning to take up to 80 days to sail from La Paz in Mexico to Japan.
Yeah.
How many miles is that?
It'll be over 6,000.
Amazing.
Amazing. And it will take you how long?
The minimum it's going to take me is 60 days. It could be up to 80. Yeah.
And that's on your own. You've done plenty of this before, haven't you? You've done lots of solo sailing.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of solo sailing, but not as big as this. It is the world's biggest ocean, after all.
And why that particular route?
I wanted it to be a challenge, not just for me, but for anyone.
Right.
So any able-bodied person can look at this and go, wow, that is difficult.
Yeah.
And so that was the main drive. Then it's become a bigger thing than that now. Now I'm raising money for charity, and I can truly inspire people to change their perception on what is possible for disabled people.
And if you don't mind, can we ask you what happened in 2009 in Afghanistan? What were the circumstances of your injury?
I was on a normal routine foot patrol. About 5 meters in front of me, a commando IED was triggered, and subsequently I became a triple amputee, both legs above the knee, left hand at the wrist, facial injuries, etc., etc.
The People's Channel.
Earlier we touched upon profit from the royal family's property and land holdings. They have more than doubled. It's a record £1.1 billion.
Yep. Charlie Peters is here with us because he's been going through what is called the Sovereign
Grant Review. So that's the report that comes out every year detailing the cash that the royal family has been given back to them from the Treasury. So they have this £1.1 billion you've discussed. That's not what's going in this year for the report from the most recent financial year. They take it from 2 years prior. So all the money the royal family makes, they send in to the Crown estate makes, I should say.
Yes, I was going to say, they make it mostly through land and property,
Yeah, but it's a portfolio of properties, £16 billion portfolio. That money will go up, as you've just heard, from the seabeds. We'll get on to that in a moment. But all that cash goes into the Treasury, and they send back a percentage, which is technically now taxpayers' money, which they can use for running the day-to-day operations of the royal household. And the core grant is around £50 million at the moment, but it's slightly higher in total. The total sovereign grant is around £81 million. That's because they're still resurfacing Buckingham Palace. That's the money that's being spent there.
People sort of want to know, Charlie, we give them £50 million. What do we get back?
Well, what do we get back? Plenty of royal duties, hundreds of royal duties in the last year, and rather a lot of travel as well. That's the core cost that they're always talking about.
Royal duties, you mean representing the country?
Yes, that's it, moving around.
Their job.
Demonstrating their presence to the nation, doing their job. Official duties, both here and overseas. The most costly of which last year was a trip to Kenya, followed by a trip to France.
But what is not highlighted in a report like this is what we actually get back from the royal family. So if we pay $50 million and they do these tours and things, that might result in other income coming in from different aspects around the world.
Yeah, we hear about soft power all the time. There's probably no greater institution that represents the pull of Great Britain for all sorts of people wanting to come and visit this country than the royal family. And they're demonstrating that this year in terms of the higher receipts they have from people paying to get into their palaces and their castles. They've an extra £10 million on that this year.
Yeah, no, we're being shouted at to move on. Okay. I wanted to find out about the seabed.
Very quickly, loads of cash and wind farms, which is great. So they're making lots of money.
But they own the land that we put wind farms on.
That's right. So there's a significant investment coming in from that route now.
How
they own the seabeds.
Yeah.
If you own the land and the land is up to the edge of the water of the sea, you own the seabed as well.
Well.
You get that free. Britain's Newsroom on air from 9:30 this morning. So let's go to Ben and Miriam to find out what is happening there. Good morning, guys.
Morning to you both. Great show. We have a similarly cracking show coming up, including, not sure if you've seen this resurfaced clip of Donald Trump's Vice President, J.D. Vance, who said a couple of years back that women who haven't given birth, like Kamala Harris, are, quote, childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and have no direct stake in America. So it begs the question, pretty good debate, I think, do you need to have children to have skin in the game in politics? People like Emmanuel Macron never had kids, Olaf Scholz, Theresa May wanted children but didn't have kids. Do we need our politicians to be parents in order to really understand what's going on with the country?
Yes, we're going to be talking about that. Is it an outrageous thing to say, or is there some truth in it? We're also going to be looking at the continued debate about trans people in sport, and the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, has come out and said that sports should be setting their own rules, but we'll be discussing whether there should be a straight-out ban in women's sports, of men in women's sports, I should say, not banning women's sports. They're very important.
That's brilliant. I mean, honestly, some very contentious subjects there. I could get steam coming out of my ears just on the mention of them.
OK, join you from 9:30, guys. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, everybody watching, listening at home. And people were able to identify very much, Anne, with what you were saying about the empathy with animals. And this was brought about by an Olympian, a British Olympian horse rider who's been taped beating her dressage horse, and she's withdrawn from the Olympic team as a result of that.
Banned.
But it's also got them people to say, we don't understand how animals communicate with us and what they feel and what they understand. And so many people who have been ill or are disabled in some way, and they talk about how their dogs, for instance, and their cats know when they're ill, know when they're sick, and empathise with them, and there's a sense of communication.
There's an awful lot more to learn about our relationship with other animals. We are, after all, an animal ourselves, aren't we?
If only we could be like Dr. Dolittle and talk
to the animals. That would be
lovely
nice.
having you today.
Yes,
thank you very much for doing that. Good. We'll do it again sometime. And tomorrow, I'm not sure who's in tomorrow, but it's not us.
That's the main thing.
Have a good day.
Over to Britain's newsroom.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine start out there for many of us, early sunshine, but it will turn cloudier into the afternoon with some rain coming along later. 1 or 2 showers first thing in the east, western Scotland perhaps, as well as West Wales, but otherwise most places getting off to a sunny start. Through the morning, the cloud will build and there will be further showers developing in the east of England, but there'll also be more persistent rain pushing into western Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales and the far southwest of Cornwall, where we get the sunshine in the south and southeast. 25, 26 Celsius, feeling very warm indeed. But where we've got the rain moving in, it's going to start to feel more unpleasant. The breeze picking up as well into the afternoon and evening. By this stage, the rain reaching Exmoor, Dartmoor and covering much of Cornwall. We keep the sunny spells into the evening for the east and southeast of England, but Wales is turning increasingly cloudy and wet. Northern Ireland by this stage also reasonably damp, as well as northwest England and western Scotland. 1 or 2 showers for the east of Scotland. Otherwise, we cling on to some breaks in the cloud through the evening and temperatures of 18 to 19 Celsius. Now, the first area of rain moves through Scotland, western England and Wales overnight. There'll also be reasonable covering of cloud spreading across the country overnight, with temperatures holding up into the mid-teens in many places. A warmer night compared with recent nights. But it's a dreary start to Thursday. Certainly a lot of low cloud around, especially towards southwestern parts. Some coastal mist and fog. And the rain and drizzle turning more heavy through the morning. Some outbreaks of more persistent wet weather moving through the south and southeast for a time. Further north, the rain is more showery, but it's a cloudy afternoon. And it's also going to be cooler as a result, with temperatures of 20 to 22 Celsius.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M42 from Staffordshire into Warwickshire is blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 10 and 9 from Tamworth to Curdworth, causing queues. On the M40 in Warwickshire, the outside lanes closed each way for repairs after an accident between junctions 12 and 11 between Gaydon and Banbury, causing roughly 7 miles of southbound queues. In Herefordshire, the A49 is closed each way for the A40 west of Ross on Wye after a car hit a tree. In Berkshire, the A34 is closed southbound from the A339 to the A4 near Newbury after a vehicle caught fire, with long delays as you divert down the A339 into Newbury. Train services are suspended between the Severn Tunnel Junction and Cardiff Central because of a shortage of trains. And in Cornwall, the A39 is partly blocked where a vehicle caught fire between the A30 at Indian Queens and the Helen roundabout at Trevarron, causing delays.
You can stay